Buried beneath deserts, jungles, and silent oceans lie messages no one was meant to read again. Stone remembers what history forgot. Entire cities vanished without witnesses, yet their fingerprints remain, etched into walls, bones, and impossible alignments with the sky. Who built them? What did they know that we don't? And why were they abandoned? Tonight, we follow the fragile trail left behind, through collapsed temples, sealed chambers, and discoveries that challenge what we think we understand about our past. Take a breath and step carefully. What you're about to see was never meant to be found. Let's begin. In the rolling plains of northern Syria, where the horizon stretches wide and the wind carries whispers of civilizations long past, stands the Ain Dara Temple. Its silhouette rises from the earth with a quiet dignity, flanked by remnants of stone walls and weathered reliefs that hint at a time when gods walked among mortals, or so the carvings seem to suggest. From a distance, the temple appears almost modest, yet each step closer reveals intricacies that defy expectations. Colossal footprints etched into the stone floor, intricate reliefs of lions and sphinxes guarding thresholds, and carefully aligned columns that cast shadows at precise angles with the rising sun. Built around the early 1st millennium BCE, Ain Dara has been identified as a sanctuary dedicated to the storm god, potentially linked to the Aramean or Neo-Hittite cultures. Scholars note its striking resemblance to the biblical descriptions of Solomon's temple, prompting debates over architectural influence and cultural exchange. The limestone and basalt walls, carved with remarkable precision, suggest a society that had mastered both artistry and engineering, a people deeply attuned to ritual and symbolism. Yet, as carefully as modern archaeologists have measured and catalogued the site, questions remain. The footprints carved in the floor, some nearly a meter in length, have sparked endless speculation. Were they purely symbolic, meant to represent divine presence? Or do they hint at something more enigmatic, an ancient ritual performed by figures whose true identity has been lost to time? The lion and sphinx reliefs, so lifelike in their menace and grace, seem almost to guard secrets rather than simply decorate. One can almost imagine a procession winding through the temple, torches flickering against the walls, chants echoing in a language now forgotten. The layout itself raises further mysteries. Unlike most contemporary sanctuaries, Ain Dara lacks the expected complexity of inner chambers, yet its massive altar and carved benches suggest it was more than a ceremonial space. It was a place of performance, perhaps even of observance, that connected the earthly with the divine. The alignment of the temple, particularly the way light falls on its inner sanctum at specific times of the year, hints at astronomical knowledge carefully encoded in stone. Was this an intentional observatory, a calendar of celestial events, or simply an architectural coincidence? Some fringe theories push the envelope further, speculating that Ain Dara might have been a hub of esoteric knowledge, a repository for rituals now incomprehensible, or even a site that channels unseen energies. While these ideas cannot be verified, they invite us to consider the human impulse to mark the sacred in ways that transcend the purely practical. Each carved groove, each fading relief, serves as a reminder that history is not always neatly explained. Standing amid the remnants today, one is struck by a paradox. The temple is at once fully human and eerily otherworldly. Its stones are the work of human hands, yet they evoke a presence that seems to linger long after the people who built it have vanished. How much of Ain Dara's purpose was understood even by those who walked its halls centuries ago? And how much remains intentionally hidden, encoded in the stone, waiting for an understanding that may never come? The temple endures as a quiet witness, weathered by time and conflict, yet resolute in its mysteries. Each ruin and relief offers a tantalizing fragment of a story larger than the records allow. A story that challenges us to wonder, to question, and to look beyond the visible. And as the Syrian sun sets over the plains, casting long shadows across the carved footprints and lion guards, one cannot help but ask, what truths, buried beneath the dust and silence, still lie waiting within the stones of Ain Dara? As the shadows of Ain Dara fade behind us, our journey takes us northward into the rugged hills of modern-day eastern Turkey, where another ancient fortress rises defiantly from the landscape. Çavuştepe sits atop a rocky outcrop, its walls stretching along steep ridges as if carved to defy both time and the terrain itself. From a distance, it seems almost impossible, a citadel that clings to the mountains, its outer fortifications blending seamlessly with natural cliffs. Here, the interplay of stone and slope hints at a society that not only understood architecture, but mastered it in ways that continue to challenge modern engineering. Built by the Urartians around the 9th to 7th centuries BCE, Çavuştepe is among the best-preserved fortresses of an ancient kingdom that thrived in the shadow of the Armenian highlands. Excavations reveal multi-tiered walls, carefully planned gateways, and subterranean chambers whose purpose is still debated. Many of these structures were constructed using enormous basalt blocks, some weighing several tons, meticulously fitted together without mortar. Scholars point to this precision as evidence of advanced engineering techniques, yet the methods by which these stones were transported and positioned remain largely speculative. How did a civilization so distant from modern machinery manipulate such enormous weights with such apparent ease? The layout of the fortress itself raises intriguing questions. Its defensive walls follow the contours of the cliffs with uncanny precision, creating a labyrinthine network of passages that could confuse invaders while enabling defenders to move efficiently. Within the walls, complex storage rooms, workshops, and possibly even ritual spaces suggest a self-sustaining settlement. Pottery fragments and inscriptions hint at a culture deeply organized, capable of both military strategy and sophisticated daily life. Yet, some aspects resist explanation. Certain walls seem overbuilt for practical defense alone, and the symmetry of some chambers implies ceremonial or symbolic functions we may only begin to guess at. Perhaps the most striking feature of Çavuştepe is its citadel tower. Rising above the lower terraces, it commands an unobstructed view of the surrounding valleys. The tower's stones are carved with precision and assembled with such care that even centuries of seismic activity have not caused significant collapse. Some researchers suggest this reflects not just skill, but a knowledge of structural physics that feels remarkably advanced for its era. Could the builders have had techniques lost to history, or is there something more enigmatic behind their understanding of balance, weight, and tension? Artifacts discovered within the fortress compound the mystery. Inscriptions in the Urartian script speak of kings, conquests, and dedications to deities, yet they leave many details frustratingly vague. Clay tablets, metal objects, and tools hint at a highly organized society capable of metallurgy, administration, and long-distance trade. Still, there are symbols and carvings whose meanings evade translation, abstract patterns, repeated motifs, and enigmatic marks that do not correspond to any known Urartian record. What ideas or knowledge were these people attempting to encode? And why do these traces persist, silent, demanding interpretation, but offering no easy answers? Speculative theories have emerged around Çavuştepe, as they do with many sites of seemingly impossible construction. Some suggest it may have been a center for advanced astronomical observation, its terraces aligned to celestial events. Though evidence is circumstantial, others posit it could have served as a hub for esoteric rituals or as a repository of knowledge meant to endure through the ages. While mainstream archaeology cannot confirm such claims, the precision and scale of the fortress leave room for wonder, inviting us to question not only what was built, but why it was conceived in such a daring, enduring form. Walking among the terraces and towers today, one feels both the weight of history and the breath of mystery. The walls speak of strategy, survival, and daily life, yet they also provoke a sense of awe and uncertainty. How much did the builders themselves understand the full implications of their design? And how many secrets were intentionally encoded in the placement of stones, the alignment of gates, or the silent inscriptions that still guard their stories? Çavuştepe stands as a testament to human ingenuity and to the questions that remain unresolved. Its stones have endured centuries of weather and conflict, yet they continue to challenge us to consider what knowledge might have been lost, what techniques vanished, and what purpose lies hidden in plain sight. As the sun dips behind the hills, casting long shadows across terraces and ramparts, one cannot help but wonder, what has this fortress witnessed in the silence of time, and how much of its mystery remains waiting for eyes willing to see beyond the obvious? From the rugged heights of Çavuştepe, our journey carries us southward, across the Mediterranean, to the sun-baked plains of Malta, where the remains of Borġ in-Nadur rise silently over the fertile fields. Here, perched on a gentle ridge overlooking the surrounding valleys, the site commands a quiet authority, its massive megalithic walls weathered by millennia yet defiant against the encroaching landscape. Unlike the mountain fortresses of the Near East, Borġ in-Nadur sits low, almost intimate in scale, but its presence is no less compelling. Every stone seems deliberate, every passage a fragment of a story that refuses to be fully told. The site, dating back to the late Neolithic and Bronze Age periods, around 2500 to 1500 BCE, presents a striking blend of domestic settlement and ceremonial construction. Archaeologists have uncovered stone huts, fortified walls, and ritual spaces that suggest the inhabitants possessed both practical and symbolic sensibilities. Yet, despite decades of excavation, Borġ in-Nadur continues to puzzle scholars. How did this relatively small community construct walls using such immense blocks, some of which weigh several tons? And why were these walls built with such precision, seemingly beyond the scope required for simple defense? Walking among the ruins, one is immediately struck by the careful alignment of the stones. The outer wall, robust and imposing, curves with the ridge in a way that maximizes both stability and vantage. Within, the remains of circular dwellings hint at domestic life, while adjacent platforms and altars suggest ritualistic activity. Some archaeologists posit that Borġ in-Nadur functioned as a sanctuary, perhaps a center for seasonal ceremonies that tied the people to the cycles of sun and sea. Others note that the layout may have been designed for defense, but if so, what enemy could have warranted such painstaking construction in this relatively isolated region? Among the most compelling features are the subterranean chambers, partially carved into the bedrock, whose exact purposes remain obscure. These spaces, cool and shadowed, may have served as storage areas, places of worship, or even burial sites, though evidence is scarce and open to interpretation. The ingenuity of the builders is undeniable. The stones are fitted with remarkable precision, yet there are no written records, no inscriptions, leaving us to interpret intent from absence. Could this silence be deliberate, a symbolic choice to guard sacred knowledge? Or is it simply the inevitable erosion of memory over thousands of years? Some of Borġ in-Nadur's mysteries invite speculation. Certain large stones appear to be deliberately positioned to mark astronomical events, solstices and equinoxes, but the alignments are subtle and difficult to confirm. Were the builders tracking celestial movements for agricultural reasons, for religious observance, or for purposes we cannot begin to imagine? And what of the intricate, sometimes enigmatic carvings found on select megaliths. They do not form a script we can read, nor a pictorial narrative we can fully decode, yet they suggest intentionality, an urge to communicate something beyond mere utility. The scale and sophistication of Borg in-Nadur's construction often prompt comparisons with other megalithic sites across Malta, such as Hypogeum and Mohenjo-Daro. Yet Borg in-Nadur retains a distinct character. Its walls, while formidable, are more intimate, the spaces between stones inviting close inspection and contemplation. Walking these terraces, one senses both human presence and the echo of something larger. Rituals performed under open skies, communal gatherings that marked the rhythms of life, perhaps even a connection to forces unseen or unrecorded. Fringe theories emerge naturally from such a site. Some suggest that Borg in-Nadur's builders possessed knowledge of structural principles lost to modern understanding, enabling them to move massive stones with minimal technology. Others propose that the site may have been designed to harness acoustics or energies, allowing rituals to resonate in ways that the modern mind cannot fully replicate. While mainstream archaeology remains cautious, the physical reality of the constructions is undeniable. These are achievements difficult to explain by ordinary means, and they leave us questioning what inspired such ambition. Even the environment itself plays a role in the enigma. The ridge offers sweeping views of the surrounding plains and the distant coastline, suggesting strategic placement. Yet the proximity to fertile land also implies practical considerations. Was Borg in-Nadur primarily a sanctuary, a settlement, or a hybrid of both? Perhaps it was all of these things, simultaneously a home, a fortress, and a spiritual center, each function layered into its stones, waiting for a coherent story to emerge that may never fully materialize. Time has weathered much of the site, yet Borg in-Nadur retains an aura of quiet authority. Stones once touched by countless hands still hum with the weight of human intent, and the terraces, walls, and subterranean chambers hint at a civilization capable of both remarkable practicality and extraordinary imagination. It is a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary meet, where daily life and ritualistic purpose blur, and where modern observers are left to wonder what has been lost to history. As the Maltese sun dips toward the horizon, casting long, shifting shadows across the megaliths, one cannot help but pause and consider what motivated the builders of Borg in-Nadur to leave such an enduring imprint on the landscape. How much of their purpose remains encoded in stone, and how many secrets of daily life, ritual, or cosmic understanding lie hidden in plain sight. Borg in-Nadur invites us to contemplate not only the ingenuity of the past, but the mysteries that endure when memory fades, leaving only stone, silence, and questions that continue to echo across the centuries. Nestled in the verdant hills of the Galilee, in northern Palestine, lies the site of Tel Yokneam, a sprawling archaeological complex that tells the story of a civilization lost to time. Its purpose and origin remain largely veiled in mystery. On the surface, it appears to be just another forgotten settlement, its remnants scattered in the dust of millennia. Yet, beneath the earth and stone lies a puzzle so intricate that even the most seasoned archaeologists have struggled to piece it together. Tel Yokneam is not an ordinary archaeological site. It is a megalithic location, meaning that it contains large stones, many of them remarkably well placed. These stones are far too large to have been moved using the primitive tools of the era. And yet, there they are. Massive monolithic blocks that seem to defy the capabilities of the ancient people who supposedly erected them. How were these enormous stones transported? What tools were used? And, perhaps most unsettling of all, what was their purpose? The site's earliest traces date back to the Bronze Age, around 4,000 years ago, making it one of the most ancient settlements in the region. From its strategic location, it overlooks fertile valleys, offering its inhabitants both protection and access to abundant resources. The area is rich in archaeological finds, remnants of homes, pottery, tools, and even human remains. But it is the megalithic stones, carefully arranged in patterns and structures that appear deliberate and precise, that have captured the imagination of scholars and mystery enthusiasts alike. At first glance, the arrangement of these stones seems to be a product of practical engineering. Large stones, some weighing several tons, form a kind of boundary wall, and others appear to have once stood upright, perhaps as markers or monuments. Some researchers suggest that these stones were placed as part of a religious or ceremonial site, similar to other megalithic structures found around the world, like Stonehenge in England or the pyramids in Egypt. But there's something about Tel Yokneam that doesn't quite fit the typical pattern of Bronze Age settlements. For one, the precision with which these stones were placed is extraordinary. The angles and alignments of the stones suggest a level of planning that goes beyond what we would expect for the time. The complexity of the site challenges the idea that its construction was purely functional. Was this merely a settlement, or was there something more at play here? Was it possible that the people of Tel Yokneam were influenced by unknown forces, or even more advanced knowledge when designing these structures? Mainstream archaeologists have proposed that the site served as a place of ritual or worship, pointing to the arrangement of the stones as evidence of an early religious complex. They speculate that the people who built Tel Yokneam may have used the site to observe celestial events, such as the solstices, much like other ancient cultures did. In this interpretation, the stones are markers of time and space, perhaps even representing the cosmic order itself. But even this explanation seems insufficient in light of the strange and unexplained features found at the site. One of the most puzzling aspects of Tel Yokneam is the lack of any written records or inscriptions. Unlike other ancient civilizations, which left behind stone tablets or inscriptions to explain their structures, the people of Tel Yokneam left no such clues. It's as if the site was designed with the intention of leaving nothing behind. No records, no explanations, just the stones themselves. This absence of written history has led some researchers to propose more speculative theories. Some suggest that Tel Yokneam may have been the site of an ancient, forgotten civilization, one that predated the known cultures of the Bronze Age by thousands of years. These theorists point to the megalithic structures and the advanced engineering of the site as evidence that the people who built Tel Yokneam possessed knowledge far beyond what we would expect from their time. Could this ancient culture have been part of a lost civilization, one that vanished without a trace, leaving only their stone monuments as a testament to their existence? Others have taken these ideas even further, speculating that the builders of Tel Yokneam were not of this earth at all. Some have suggested that extraterrestrial beings might have been involved in the construction of the site, citing the alignment of the stones and the advanced techniques used to move and position them as evidence of an otherworldly influence. While these theories are often met with skepticism, they persist, fueled by the fact that the true purpose of the site remains as elusive as the people who built it. And yet, even with all the theories and hypotheses, there are still more questions than answers. What was the true purpose of the megalithic stones? Were they markers for a ritualistic calendar, or did they serve some unknown function in the daily lives of the people who once lived there? Why were no written records left behind to explain the site's purpose, as was customary in other ancient cultures? Perhaps the most intriguing question is this: why does the mystery of Tel Yokneam still endure? Despite centuries of excavation, the site refuses to yield its secrets, leaving behind only its monumental stones and the echoes of a civilization long gone. The unanswered questions surrounding Tel Yokneam suggest that there is more to this site than meets the eye, that its true purpose may still be hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be discovered. As the sun sets over the hills of the Galilee, the ancient stones of Tel Yokneam stand silent, their secrets locked away in time. And perhaps, as the years go by, the mystery of this enigmatic site will continue to haunt the imagination, inviting us to wonder, what lies hidden within the stones, waiting to be uncovered? Leaving the sunlit terraces of Tel Yokneam behind, our journey takes us westward across the Mediterranean to the rocky coastline of Minorca, where the cliffs of Coll de Cala Morell rise sharply against the horizon. From a distance, the site appears almost like a natural fortress. Jagged limestone cliffs plunge into the turquoise waters below, while wind-sculpted ledges and plateaus form terraces that seem at once accidental and deliberate. The silhouette of the settlement catches the sunlight, highlighting walls and openings that hint at centuries of human ingenuity and purpose. Here, the relationship between land and architecture is intimate, almost intimate enough to blur the line between natural formation and human design. Coll de Cala Morell is best known for its Talaiotic culture, a civilization that flourished on the Balearic Islands during the Late Bronze and Iron Ages, roughly between 1000 and 500 BCE. Excavations have revealed a settlement complex perched high above the sea, where circular stone towers, burial caves, and dry stone terraces coexist in an arrangement that continues to puzzle archaeologists. These structures were built using large, carefully placed stones, many weighing several tons, forming towers and walls whose precision is remarkable for a society without metal tools or cranes. How did these early islanders manipulate such massive stones with apparent ease, aligning them so carefully with the contours of cliffs and ridges? Walking through the remains today, one is immediately struck by the complexity of the layout. The towers, or taliots, rise in simple geometric forms, yet their placement suggests a knowledge of sightlines and territorial control that is sophisticated and intentional. From the upper terraces, one can survey not only the surrounding landscape but also the approaches to the settlement, hinting at defensive strategy. Within the enclosed areas, small platforms and paved spaces hint at communal life, perhaps markets or gathering spaces, yet their scale and orientation suggest symbolic as well as practical purposes. Could these arrangements encode knowledge of astronomical cycles, seasonal changes, or rituals that guided daily life? The necropolis of Coll de Cala Morell adds another layer of mystery. Carved into the cliffs themselves, the burial caves hold remnants of funerary practices whose full meaning is elusive. Some chambers contain stone benches and alcoves, possibly for offerings or ceremonial placement of the deceased, while other caves seem almost inaccessible, as if intended to protect or isolate certain individuals or objects. Archaeologists have uncovered skeletal remains, pottery, and small personal items, yet the significance of their arrangement remains unclear. Were these burials merely practical, or did they serve a ritualized purpose that we can only glimpse through the traces left behind? The ingenuity of the Talaiotic builders is evident in the way they shaped the landscape to suit their needs. Dry stone terraces stabilize steep slopes, creating usable space where none seems possible. Massive stones form walls and platforms with surprising accuracy, their joints so tight that even centuries of wind and rain have failed to destabilize them. How did a society without modern engineering tools achieve this level of precision? And what motivated them to invest so much effort into constructions whose scale and complexity go far beyond basic survival needs? Speculative theories naturally emerge when confronting such achievements. Some researchers have suggested that the Talaiots were aligned to celestial events, perhaps marking solstices or equinoxes to aid in agricultural planning or ritual observance. Others propose that the caves and terraces may have been used for sound amplification, ritual performance, or even early astronomical observation, though definitive proof remains elusive. The precise purpose of many of the structures remains uncertain, allowing the mind to wander across possibilities that merge practicality, spirituality, and innovation. The site's location itself invites reflection. Perched on cliffs above the Mediterranean, it is both isolated and commanding, allowing the settlement to monitor sea and land routes while maintaining a protective distance from potential threats. Yet this isolation also suggests a deeper reason for its placement. Perhaps the builders sought not only defense but a connection to the elements, the sun, the wind, the sea, that shaped their world. Could the location have been chosen to facilitate ceremonies that bridged the human and natural realms, linking life and death, earth and sky? Even today, walking among the terraces, towers, and burial caves, the sense of mystery is palpable. Stones carved and placed thousands of years ago bear witness to human skill, ambition, and ingenuity, yet the intentions behind their arrangement remain tantalizingly out of reach. What knowledge did the Talayotic people possess that enabled them to manipulate their environment so skillfully? What secrets did they encode in the alignment of stones, in the placement of burial chambers, or in the design of communal spaces? Coll de Cala Morell endures as a monument to human determination and creativity, its terraces and talayots silently guarding their secrets against the passage of time. The cliffs, wind, and waves have not diminished the sense of intentionality embedded in every stone, nor the questions that arise when we confront such a carefully wrought but ultimately enigmatic settlement. What truths lie hidden within these walls and caves, and how much of the Talayotic knowledge remains lost to us, buried in stone and silence? As the Mediterranean sun dips low, casting long shadows across terraces and towers, we are left to ponder the enduring enigma. What did it truly mean to live here, and how much of that understanding has vanished with the centuries, leaving only the stones and the questions they provoke? Leaving the windswept cliffs of Minorca behind, our journey turns eastward once more, across the Mediterranean and into the Anatolian plateau of modern-day Turkey. Here, amidst the rolling hills near the banks of the Kızılırmak River, lies Asikli Hoyuk, a settlement whose unassuming mound belies the profound mysteries embedded within its layers of earth and stone. From a distance, it appears modest, a low, gently rising tell surrounded by fields and scrubland. Yet each step closer reveals a complex network of mud brick foundations, circular houses, and remnants of walls, whispering of a community that thrived nearly 10,000 years ago, during the Neolithic era. Asikli Hoyuk is among the earliest known settlements in the region, occupied between approximately 8,200 and 7,400 BCE. Excavations have revealed a remarkable level of organization. Dwellings arranged in a semi-structured pattern, with shared courtyards, storage pits, and hearths that hint at communal life. But what is perhaps most astonishing is the sophistication embedded in these early structures. Circular homes with stone bases and mud brick superstructures were built with an awareness of stability and durability, evidence of a people mastering architectural principles long before the advent of large-scale construction tools. How did these early inhabitants conceive of spatial organization on such a scale, and what cultural or spiritual priorities guided the placement of each dwelling? Walking among the remains today, one is struck by the precision with which the buildings were constructed. Stones are arranged with careful attention to weight distribution, supporting walls that would have endured seasonal shifts, erosion, and the passage of centuries. Hearths and storage pits are placed logically, yet some alignments suggest ritual or symbolic intent. The interplay between domestic functionality and ceremonial space raises questions that archaeology alone cannot fully answer. Were these homes simply shelters, or were they designed to reflect a deeper cosmology, connecting daily life with cycles of nature, celestial observation, or spiritual practice? Burials at Asikli Hoyuk add another layer of mystery. Skeletons have been found beneath the floors of homes, sometimes accompanied by carefully arranged stones, ochre, and small objects, suggesting a reverence for the dead integrated into the fabric of daily life. This practice, while not unique in the Neolithic, hints at a worldview in which the living and the dead existed in close proximity. But why were some burials elaborate, with indications of ritual significance, while others are minimal? Could these differences reflect social hierarchies, spiritual roles, or perhaps knowledge now lost to time? The choices made in life and death appear deliberate, yet their full meaning remains elusive. The discovery of early domesticated plants and animals at Asikli Hoyuk has also transformed our understanding of human innovation. The inhabitants appear to have been among the first in Anatolia to experiment with agriculture and animal husbandry, yet how they balanced these early technologies with construction and communal organization remains a subject of debate. Were these agricultural practices purely practical, designed to sustain a growing population, or were they intertwined with ritual, observation of natural cycles, and social cohesion? Each grain of wheat, each domesticated goat, offers a fragment of a larger story, yet the picture remains incomplete. Some of the site's most perplexing elements involve evidence of planning that seems almost intentional beyond necessity. Circular houses are often clustered in patterns that suggest careful spatial awareness, pathways that interconnect structures in ways that appear purposeful. Could these arrangements encode knowledge, astronomical, calendrical, or social, that is no longer legible to us? Some researchers speculate that the people of Asikli Hoyuk may have possessed observational knowledge of the heavens, tracking seasonal cycles to guide planting, ceremonies, or communal gatherings. While direct evidence is limited, the implications of such planning invite wonder and speculation alike. The site also challenges our assumptions about the capabilities of early Neolithic communities. Moving large stones, constructing durable mud brick walls, and organizing settlements on such a scale required technical skill, social coordination, and perhaps knowledge that has not survived in written form. How much of this knowledge was practical, and how much was ritualized, embedded in the act of building itself? Could the processes of construction have been guided by principles we can no longer perceive, a kind of applied wisdom lost to time? Even now, walking among the foundations, hearths, and burial areas, one feels the quiet presence of those who lived and died here. The air seems to hum with the labor, thought, and intention of a community that existed at the threshold of history. Each stone, each circular foundation, speaks of effort and purpose, yet leaves questions that refuse resolution. How did these people organize their lives so deliberately, so effectively, without written records? What rituals, beliefs, or knowledge shaped their choices? And what has been lost to the passage of millennia, leaving only fragments for us to interpret? Asikli Hoyuk endures as both a record and a mystery. Its walls and hearths are evidence of early human ingenuity, while its burials and structural patterns hint at a culture deeply attuned to the cycles of life, death, and nature. Yet, for all that has been uncovered, the settlement retains an aura of uncertainty, of knowledge partially understood, of decisions whose rationale may never be fully revealed. What truths remain hidden beneath the mud brick, within the carefully arranged stones, or in the silent patterns of its architecture? As the Anatolian sun casts long shadows across the ancient mound, one is left to wonder, how much of this early Neolithic knowledge survives only in the echoes of human intention, waiting for those willing to observe, question, and imagine beyond what the evidence immediately tells us? From the sun-drenched plains of Anatolia, our exploration carries us northward, across Europe, to the windswept landscapes of southern Sweden. Here, amid rolling fields and quiet forests, the site of Ekornavallen emerges with a subtle yet commanding presence. At first glance, it appears simple, a cluster of standing stones punctuating the earth, some solitary, some forming rough alignments, with low mounds marking ancient burials. Yet this apparent simplicity belies a depth of human intent and mystery that has captivated archaeologists and historians for centuries. Each stone, weathered and moss-covered, seems to hold a story both revealed and hidden, a testament to a people who lived and died here thousands of years ago. Ekornavallen dates primarily to the Bronze Age, roughly between 1700 and 500 BCE, though evidence suggests that its use may extend earlier and later, reflecting long-standing cultural practices in the region. The site encompasses both burial mounds and standing stones, a combination that hints at intertwined concerns of life, death, and memory. Excavations have uncovered skeletal remains, cremation deposits, and occasional grave goods, tools, ornaments, and pottery that illuminate aspects of daily life and ritual. Yet, despite the care taken in these burials, much remains puzzling. How did communities decide the placement of stones and mounds? Was the landscape itself part of the ritual, a deliberate canvas onto which the dead and the living inscribed their presence? Walking through Ekornavallen today, one is immediately struck by the interplay between the natural environment and human design. The stones vary in size, some massive and upright, others smaller and tilted by centuries of soil movement. Their arrangement appears irregular at first, yet closer inspection reveals patterns. Linear alignments pointing toward distant horizons, clusters forming subtle enclosures, and solitary stones marking prominent points on the terrain. What logic guided these placements? Were they intended to commemorate specific individuals, to align with celestial events, or to communicate symbolic messages that we can no longer decipher? The burial mounds add an additional layer of intrigue. Some are simple and unadorned, while others rise with deliberate prominence, their contours carefully sculpted to distinguish them from the surrounding landscape. Archaeologists have noted variations in size and construction that suggest social differentiation or ritual significance, yet the absence of written records leaves much open to interpretation. Did these differences reflect status, spiritual function, or something more enigmatic, a hidden knowledge encoded in the scale, orientation, and material of each mound? The human intent is evident, yet its full meaning is tantalizingly elusive. Evidence at Ekornavallen also hints at sophisticated planning and awareness of the broader environment. Certain stones and mounds appear oriented to align with the rising or setting sun during solstices, or to mark seasonal changes in the landscape. Could these alignments have served practical purposes? Agricultural calendars, timing for community gatherings, or were they purely ceremonial, guiding rituals of life, death, and continuity? Some researchers even speculate that sound, visibility, and spatial perception may have played a role, that the placement of each stone was carefully considered to amplify voice, focus attention, or mark sight lines across the terrain. If so, what knowledge informed these choices, and how was it transmitted across generations? The sheer scale and precision of some of the stones raise further questions. Transporting and erecting megaliths without advanced machinery would have required ingenuity, cooperation, and technique. How did Bronze Age communities manage such feats on uneven terrain? Did they employ methods now lost to history, or were their solutions deceptively simple, yet remarkably effective? Whatever the answer, the physical reality of the site remains undeniable. These are constructions that endure, that interact with the landscape and sky, and that demand our attention and curiosity. Fringe theories have naturally arisen around sites like Ekornavallen. Some suggest that standing stones were markers of sacred or mystical energy, points where the living could commune with the dead or the divine. Others propose that their placement encodes astronomical, mathematical, or even navigational knowledge, preserved across generations in ways that defy simple explanation. While such ideas remain speculative, they underscore the sense of awe the site evokes. Here, human hands and intention intersect with time, earth, and sky to produce something that continues to intrigue, inspire, and mystify. Even today, wandering among the stones and mounds, one senses both human presence and a profound silence. The wind carries echoes of countless generations who lived, labored, and mourned here. Each stone bears witness to human skill, belief, and ritual, yet their silent arrangement provokes questions that resist definitive answers. What principles guided their construction? How much knowledge of astronomy, geography, or spiritual practice did these communities possess? And how much has been irretrievably lost, leaving only the enduring physical record to suggest intent? Ekornavallen endures not simply as a burial ground, but as a testament to human ingenuity, curiosity, and ritual imagination. Its stones and mounds, placed with care and consideration, invite reflection on the intersection of the living and the dead, of the practical and the symbolic. They challenge modern observers to consider how much early societies understood about their world, how they encoded that understanding in stone, and how much still lies hidden, silent yet perceptible to those willing to look closely. As the Scandinavian sun dips low, casting long shadows across the megaliths and burial mounds, one is left to wonder, what truths remain concealed within these stones, and how much of human intention endures quietly, waiting for eyes attuned to perceive the patterns that have survived millennia. From the windswept stones of Ekornavallen, our journey moves across continents and oceans, descending into the highlands of southern Peru. Here, perched on the rugged hillsides overlooking the expansive valleys of the Andes, lie the Cutimbo Chullpas, ancient funerary towers that have withstood centuries of wind, rain, and seismic activity. The site stretches along terraced slopes, where cylindrical stone structures rise abruptly from the earth, their smooth, weathered surfaces illuminated by the soft Andean sun. From a distance, they resemble silent sentinels, guarding the memories of a people long gone, yet each tower seems to pulse with intent, a testimony to rituals and knowledge that have survived against the odds. Cutimbo Chullpas, constructed primarily by pre-Inca cultures between roughly 1100 and 1400 CE, serve as burial towers for elite members of the community. Each chulpa was meticulously built from finely cut volcanic stone, often fitted together without mortar, forming precise cylindrical structures that could reach several meters in height. Archaeologists have noted the remarkable uniformity of construction, as well as the precision with which some stones were carved and aligned, hinting at techniques and knowledge that remain difficult to fully explain. How did these builders, without modern cranes or lifting devices, raise massive stones into place with such stability and symmetry? Approaching the site today, one is immediately struck by the organization of the towers. Many stand alone, while others form clusters across terraced slopes, their positions seemingly chosen with purpose. Some align with prominent topographical features, valleys, ridges, and distant mountains, while others face east, perhaps toward the rising sun, suggesting ritual or symbolic intent. These alignments provoke questions that linger in the silence between the towers. Were they meant to honor the deceased, to connect with celestial cycles, or to mark territorial or spiritual boundaries? Within the chulpas themselves, discoveries hint at the social and spiritual lives of their occupants. Skeletal remains, often accompanied by offerings such as pottery, textiles, and tools, indicate complex funerary practices that reflect both reverence and hierarchy. Yet the arrangement of these burials often raises more questions than answers. Some towers house a single elite individual, while others contain multiple interments. Were these towers family tombs, monuments to societal leaders, or repositories of knowledge and ritual objects meant to survive time itself? And why choose the tower form, so difficult to construct, over simpler burial methods? The construction of the towers themselves deepens the mystery. Many are cylindrical, with walls slightly tapering inward toward the top, a design that confers stability while creating a distinctive profile. Some chulpas are hollow, with internal niches carved into the walls, while others remain solid. The precision of the stonework, especially the interlocking of irregularly shaped volcanic blocks, suggests knowledge of structural principles that may have been lost with the fall of these civilizations. How was such technical expertise transmitted? Were there specialized builders whose knowledge was secretive or ritualized, shared only with select members of the community? Speculative theories naturally surround Cutimbo Chullpas. Some researchers propose that the towers functioned not only as tombs but as points of spiritual communication, where the living could connect with ancestors or divine forces. Others suggest astronomical purposes. Certain towers may have been aligned with solar or lunar events, marking seasonal transitions critical to agricultural or ceremonial calendars. While hard evidence remains limited, the careful placement and enduring form of these towers lend credence to the idea that they were more than mere burial structures. They were monuments that merged engineering, ritual, and symbolic intent in a way that resists replication even today. The location itself reinforces the enigma. The hillsides of Cutimbo provide commanding views of the valleys below, yet they are often steep, remote, and challenging to access. Constructing large stone towers on such terrain would have required not only technical skill, but coordination, planning, and a sophisticated understanding of logistics. Why were these sites chosen? Was the choice dictated solely by the desire for prominence and visibility, or was there a deeper cosmological or spiritual reasoning that linked the dead, the living, and the surrounding landscape? Even after centuries of weathering, the Chulpas retain an aura of quiet authority. Stones carefully cut and positioned long ago continue to defy gravity and decay, a silent reminder of human ingenuity and intention. Standing among them, one can almost imagine the rituals that once took place, the careful placement of the deceased, the offerings left by family and community, the songs, chants, or prayers that may have accompanied these ceremonies. And yet, so much remains beyond reach. The precise methods of construction, the full significance of orientation, the rituals now lost to time. Cutimbo Chullpas endure as both historical record and enduring mystery. They are tangible evidence of skill, organization, and cultural sophistication, yet they also provoke questions about human ingenuity, ritual, and memory. How did the builders accomplish feats of construction that modern engineering struggles to replicate without heavy machinery? What knowledge, spiritual, practical, or both, was encoded in the placement, form, and orientation of each tower? And what secrets linger still, hidden in the stone, waiting for those who are willing to observe, reflect, and wonder at the lives of a civilization that reached across centuries to touch eternity? From the highlands of Peru, our journey carries us north across the Atlantic to the sun-warmed plains and rolling hills of mainland Spain. Here, amidst fields, scrublands, and isolated rocky outcrops, lie hundreds of prehistoric stone enclosures, some circular, others rectangular or irregularly shaped, scattered across the landscape like echoes of a distant past. At first glance, they appear simple, low, rough walls enclosing small areas, often weathered to near invisibility, easily overlooked by casual observers. Yet each structure, each carefully placed stone, hints at deliberate human intent, preserving traces of lives, rituals, and knowledge that have vanished into time. These stone enclosures date from the late Neolithic through the Bronze Age, roughly between 3000 and 1000 BCE, though some may be even older. Unlike monumental megalithic structures, Many of these enclosures are modest in scale, yet their placement and orientation often suggest careful planning. Some are located on elevated plateaus overlooking valleys. Others follow the contours of hills or cluster along river terraces. Archaeologists have long debated their function. Were they simple animal pens, domestic spaces, ceremonial platforms, or something else entirely? The evidence is tantalizing but rarely definitive, leaving room for wonder at the intentions of their builders. Walking among these sites today, one cannot help but notice a subtle logic in their distribution. Some enclosures are aligned along sightlines, forming visual connections across hills or along riverbanks, as if the landscape itself had been mapped and encoded with meaning. Others cluster in small groups, suggesting localized centers of activity, while solitary enclosures seem deliberately isolated, guarding unknown purposes. Were these arrangements purely practical, or did they convey symbolic or ritual significance, marking sacred spaces, territorial boundaries, or points of observation? The construction of the enclosures themselves is modest yet precise. Stones, often locally sourced, were laid with care, forming stable walls without mortar. While the walls rarely rise more than a meter high today, their persistence across millennia testifies to an understanding of weight, balance, and natural durability. Some enclosures incorporate low internal partitions, paved areas, or embedded stones that hint at internal organization, suggesting more than mere containment. Could these features indicate specialized functions, ritual practices, astronomical observation, or structured communal activity that are lost to modern interpretation? Artifacts recovered from some enclosures deepen the mystery. Pottery fragments, stone tools, and occasionally personal items suggest human activity, but rarely clarify purpose. In a few cases, archaeologists have found remnants of burnt materials, hinting at feasting, ceremonies, or ritual fires. The absence of written records means that the meaning of these spaces is largely speculative. Were these enclosures part of a broader cultural system, a landscape marked with encoded knowledge about seasons, celestial events, or spiritual beliefs? And if so, why do they vary so dramatically in form and placement across regions? Some alignments within the enclosures invite particularly intriguing questions. Certain circular enclosures appear to have openings aligned with sunrise or sunset at solstices, while other rectangular formations correspond roughly to cardinal directions. Could these alignments have served as early calendars, guiding planting, harvesting, or ritual observances? Or were they intended as symbolic markers reflecting a worldview that integrated landscape, sky, and human activity into a single, coherent system? The precision of such alignments, achieved without compasses or instruments, suggests a knowledge of observation and spatial awareness that continues to impress modern researchers. Speculative interpretations abound. Some theories propose that the enclosures were centers for ritual gatherings, places where early communities could convene to mark seasonal changes, commemorate the dead, or transmit knowledge. Others suggest that certain enclosures may have functioned as acoustic spaces, designed to amplify sound during chants or ceremonies, though evidence is limited. Still others posit astronomical or cosmological purposes, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of the heavens encoded in stone. Whatever the case, these structures persist as silent witnesses to human ingenuity, leaving us to puzzle over the intentions of their creators. The landscape itself becomes part of the mystery. Rolling hills, river valleys, and isolated rocky promontories frame the enclosures, creating a subtle dialogue between natural features and human construction. Many enclosures are sited for visibility, commanding views of surrounding terrain, while others seem hidden, tucked into folds of the land. Did these choices reflect practical concerns, defense, livestock management, agriculture, or deeper symbolic or spiritual reasoning? Perhaps the builders understood the land not merely as a resource, but as a medium for expression, embedding meaning in placement, shape, and connection across the terrain. Even today, walking among these scattered stones, one senses a continuity of purpose and intent that transcends time. The walls, though low and eroded, bear witness to human effort and observation. They prompt reflection on questions that remain unresolved. How did these communities coordinate construction without modern tools? What knowledge guided their placement, form, and orientation? Were the enclosures primarily functional, or were they designed to convey meaning beyond the immediate practical? And what might still lie hidden beneath the soil, invisible yet waiting to be discovered? The prehistoric stone enclosures of mainland Spain endure as both artifacts and enigmas. They are tangible remnants of human skill, observation, and organization, yet they resist full interpretation. Each wall, each carefully positioned stone, invites contemplation of a people who engaged with their environment in ways we are only beginning to appreciate. They challenge us to consider not only the technical achievements of the past, but the intentionality, ritual, and knowledge that shaped human life thousands of years ago. As sunlight shifts across fields and hills, casting long shadows on these enigmatic walls, one cannot help but ask, how much of the story has been lost to time, and what secrets do these scattered stones still hold, waiting for those willing to see beyond the obvious? Perched on the southern coast of Easter Island, where the wind sculpts the tall grasses into shifting patterns and the ocean crashes relentlessly against volcanic cliffs, lies the enigmatic Ahu Vinapu Platform. From a distance, it might appear to be a simple stone structure, a testament to human labor on a remote island. But as you approach, the meticulous craftsmanship becomes undeniable. The massive basalt blocks, some weighing several tons, fit together with a precision that seems to defy the tools and techniques historically available to the Rapa Nui people. Each stone bears the subtle marks of shaping, yet they interlock so flawlessly that even a knife blade cannot slide between them. The platform itself stretches for nearly 100 feet, aligned along the contours of the landscape in a way that appears both deliberate and harmonious with its surroundings. Its exact purpose has been debated for decades. Was it a ceremonial site? A stage for rituals connecting the Rapa Nui with their ancestors and the natural world? Or did it serve a more practical function, perhaps a foundation for a larger structure, long since lost to time? The prevailing archaeological consensus suggests it is an ahu, a sacred platform upon which the island's iconic moai statues once stood. Yet, even within that framework, questions abound. The precision with which these enormous stones are fitted resembles masonry found thousands of miles away in the Andean highlands, raising the specter of connections that remain unproven and tantalizingly elusive. Historical records and modern studies indicate that the Rapa Nui people likely used a combination of stone tools and brute manpower to carve and transport these monoliths. Ethnographic accounts describe wooden sledges, rollers, and ropes used to maneuver the statues across the volcanic terrain. But when we examine Ahu Vinapu itself, the scale of engineering and the sheer perfection of the stone joints provoke hesitation. How could a society with rudimentary metal tools and no iron or steel achieve such near impossible precision? Some stones are carved and positioned with angles so exact that they suggest a knowledge of geometry far beyond what is typically credited to a Polynesian culture isolated in the South Pacific. The platform's alignment adds another layer of mystery. Several researchers have noted its potential astronomical orientation, possibly aligned with the solstices or with specific celestial bodies. If true, this would suggest that the builders were not only masterful engineers, but also keen observers of the heavens, embedding their understanding of time, season, and cosmic order into stone. Yet, Unlike other archaeological sites where astronomical alignment can be clearly traced to functional observatories or ceremonial cycles, Ahu Vinapu resists easy categorization. Could this alignment be coincidental, a reflection of topography rather than intent? Or does it hint at a sophisticated comprehension of celestial mechanics lost to history? The stonework itself invites closer scrutiny. Each basalt block is smoothed and angled to nestle perfectly against its neighbors, a technique that produces walls both aesthetically striking and structurally enduring. Some scholars point out that similar masonry appears at Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where stones fit together without mortar with astonishing precision. This parallel has fueled speculation about possible pre-Columbian trans-Pacific contact, though no conclusive evidence has yet emerged to substantiate such claims. The Rapa Nui oral traditions do not recount foreign architects or external influences, yet the uncanny resemblance is difficult to dismiss entirely. Intriguingly, there are features of Ahu Vinapu that defy even these comparisons. Certain blocks are not merely stacked. They are subtly tilted and shaped to distribute weight in a way that enhances seismic stability, an insight that even modern engineers might study. Considering that Easter Island is not a region prone to severe earthquakes, this refinement seems almost superfluous, unless the builders had experience with structures elsewhere, or an inherited understanding of stone dynamics that has since vanished. Could these techniques have been discovered independently by the Rapa Nui, honed over generations of trial and error? Or is there a knowledge transfer from an unknown source now lost beneath centuries of ocean wind and soil? As one walks along the platform, the texture of the stones under the fingertips tells a story of human endeavor and patience. The surfaces are weathered, yet the joints remain immaculate, suggesting that time itself has been unable to compromise the skill that went into their placement. Modern engineers attempting to replicate this precision with similar materials and manual methods have reported only partial success, underscoring the difficulty and perhaps the mystery behind the original construction. It is as if Ahu Vinapu quietly whispers of knowledge that has been forgotten, challenging us to bridge the chasm between possibility and the historical record. Equally compelling are the subtle signs of ritualistic use. Traces of red ochre and other pigments hint at ceremonial practices, while the surrounding terrain suggests gatherings of people in observance of events long gone. Archaeologists have proposed that the site was not merely functional, but spiritual, a nexus where the human and divine converged. Yet, what specific ceremonies were held here, and how they were integrated into Rapa Nui cosmology, remain tantalizingly opaque. We can see the physical remains, we can infer the labor and reverence involved, but the precise meaning is a void that no excavation has fully illuminated. Even the moai, when they stood atop Ahu Vinapu, were more than monuments. They were vessels of ancestral mana, channels through which spiritual power flowed. The platform, then, was not just a base but an integral component of a larger system of belief. Its placement, orientation, and stonework all coalesced into a statement that transcended the physical. If one allows the mind to wander, the platform seems almost alive, an echo of voices and rituals now silent but preserved in the meticulous arrangement of rock. Researchers have examined the quarry sites where the basalt blocks were extracted. The effort to carve, transport, and position stones weighing several tons across rough terrain underscores the extraordinary organizational capabilities of the Rapa Nui. Yet, despite centuries of study, no complete method has been reconstructed that fully accounts for both the efficiency and the precision observed at Ahu Vinapu. Every proposed technique, sledges, ropes, levers, leaves gaps in plausibility when confronted with the exactitude of the stonework. Was there a technique or principle employed here that has simply disappeared from human knowledge? Something that allowed these builders to achieve what seems nearly impossible? Fringe theories have emerged to address these gaps. ranging from lost advanced technologies to subtle suggestions of ancient wisdom passed across oceans. While the academic consensus emphasizes human ingenuity within the context of available tools and social organization, the site itself seems to tease us, posing questions without offering answers. It is a reminder that history often holds more questions than conclusions, that some achievements defy complete explanation and yet remain firmly in the realm of human endeavor. Walking around Ahu Vinapu today, with the wind tugging at clothing and hair, one cannot help but feel the weight of time. The platform stands not only as a physical structure, but as a monument to curiosity, determination, and perhaps the unexplored potential of human knowledge. Each joint, each alignment, each massive stone carries a silent story, challenging observers to reconstruct not just how it was built, but why it was built in precisely this manner. It invites reflection on the boundaries of capability, ingenuity, and the mysteries of civilizations that flourished in isolation, yet left legacies that continue to baffle and inspire. And so, as the sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the basalt, Ahu Vinapu remains, silent yet insistent, inviting contemplation. Could there be techniques, knowledge, or purposes embedded here that we may never fully comprehend? The platform stands, a testament to the enduring enigma of human achievement, reminding us that some mysteries are meant not to be solved definitively, but to endure, provoking wonder, study, and the quiet acknowledgement that there are chapters of history still hidden, waiting for the patient observer to question, to imagine, and to seek. Nestled in the arid plains of the Casma Valley in Peru, Cerro Sechín rises like a sentinel over the surrounding landscape, its undulating hills punctuated by the silent, imposing presence of carved stone walls. At first glance, it is a ruin among ruins, a remnant of a civilization whose story is whispered only through the stones themselves. But as the eye travels along the lines of the monumental walls, the true gravity of the site becomes apparent. Each block is a canvas of human effort, etched with images that are as haunting as they are intricate. Figures of warriors, decapitated bodies, and ceremonial scenes stretch across the walls, frozen in stone in a tableau that both fascinates and unsettles. Cerro Sechín dates back to roughly 1600 BCE, part of the Casma Sechín culture, a civilization that predated the more widely known Chavin and Moche cultures. The central wall, constructed of massive stone blocks, is the focus of scholarly attention. The carvings are not merely decorative, they convey a narrative, though its exact meaning remains elusive. The figures are depicted in stylized, almost geometric forms, their eyes wide, their mouths open as if in mid-shout, their limbs rigid with unnatural precision. Some scenes appear to depict ritualized combat or sacrificial rites, raising profound questions about the social and religious practices of this early Andean society. The engineering of the walls themselves is as compelling as the carvings. Each block is carefully cut, aligned, and placed to withstand the passage of millennia. There is little evidence of mortar. The stones are fitted with a level of precision that makes one wonder about the techniques and tools available at the time. How did a civilization, isolated in the highlands and without metal tools, manage to shape and position stones of such scale with such exactness? Even modern attempts to replicate this level of masonry with primitive tools meet with partial success at best. The craftsmanship evokes comparisons with other ancient sites of extraordinary stonework, from Sacsayhuaman to the mysterious constructions on Easter Island, leaving observers to ponder the limits of human ingenuity in antiquity. Walking along the carved blocks, the imagery evokes a sense of ritualistic intensity. Figures are shown in pairs, often with their torsos dissected or decapitated, sometimes in symmetrical arrangements that suggest ceremonial or symbolic importance. Researchers debate the meaning. Are these depictions of actual historical events, cautionary tales, or purely ritualistic representations intended to convey power and fear? The more one examines the carvings, the more apparent it becomes that there is a deliberate narrative at work, yet its syntax and grammar, if one could call it that, remain undeciphered. There is a rhythm to the carvings, a visual language that has resisted translation for centuries. The wall's orientation adds another layer to the mystery. Some scholars suggest they are aligned to the cardinal points, or perhaps to celestial events such as solstices and equinoxes. If this is the case, then the builders possessed not only advanced skill in stonemasonry, but also an intimate understanding of astronomy. Could it be that these walls functioned as both a ceremonial center and a cosmic calendar, a dual-purpose monument that encoded both earthly and celestial order in stone? The evidence is tantalizing but inconclusive, leaving ample room for speculation without veering into sensationalism. One of the most striking features of Cerro Sechín is the scale and consistency of its reliefs. Every carved block maintains a uniformity in height, depth, and proportion that suggests not only artistic intention, but also technical mastery. The level of detail, from the individual fingers of the figures to the expressions etched on their faces, implies a sophistication that seems almost anachronistic given the tools thought to be available at the time. Could this represent an evolved artistic tradition, honed over generations? Or might it hint at knowledge or techniques that are now lost to history? The answer remains just out of reach, obscured by the centuries and the sands of the Chasma Valley. Excavations and studies reveal additional layers of complexity. Beneath the central walls lie foundations and older constructions, indicating that Cerro Sechín was not a singular moment of human achievement, but rather the culmination of long-term occupation and ritual use. The site's builders may have inherited architectural knowledge from earlier generations, refining and perfecting techniques that already existed. Yet the precision and scale remain extraordinary, prompting continued debate among archaeologists and engineers alike. The carvings themselves have inspired both scholarly and speculative interpretations. Some see them as evidence of ritualized warfare or sacrifice, others as allegorical narratives of creation, cosmic order, or political dominance. There are parallels with the Moche and later Andean cultures, suggesting a continuity of iconography, but the exact purpose and meaning of these early carvings are elusive. Could the depictions represent historical reality, mythological allegory, or a combination of both? And if so, what social, spiritual, or political forces drove such elaborate expression in stone? Comparisons with other ancient sites only deepen the enigma. The precision of the stone fitting, the scale of the reliefs, and the apparent understanding of astronomical alignment evoke parallels with sites that remain at the edge of what conventional archaeology deems possible. Did the builders of Cerro Sechín independently achieve these feats, or might there have been influences or knowledge transfers we cannot yet trace? The absence of direct records leaves these questions unanswered, allowing the walls themselves to speak in silence through form and shadow, through the interplay of light across carved faces and raised reliefs. The human element is ever present. One can imagine the laborers carving each block, chiseling with rudimentary tools, guided by visionaries or priests who understood the importance of precision and symbolism. The sweat, effort, and ritual devotion required to produce such walls underscore a society capable of remarkable organization, skill, and collective endeavor. And yet, even with this understanding, the mechanics of construction and the meaning of the carvings remain partially shrouded, as if intentionally beyond the reach of simple explanation. In recent decades, modern archaeologists have attempted to document and interpret Cerro Sechín with advanced technology, 3D scanning, photogrammetry, and soil analysis. These methods have revealed patterns and alignments invisible to the naked eye, but the fundamental mystery persists. The walls endure, weathered yet imposing, a testament to human creativity and determination, yet simultaneously an open question. How much of the knowledge required to create such a site has been lost? What social, spiritual, or cosmic imperatives motivated its creation? And are there layers of meaning yet to be uncovered, hidden in plain sight within the stones themselves? Standing before the carved blocks, the visitor is confronted with an undeniable paradox. These walls are both familiar and alien, human, yet imbued with a sense of the extraordinary. They evoke admiration for technical skill, curiosity for cultural context, and awe at the unknown. Each relief, each joint, each placement invites reflection on the capabilities of ancient peoples and the boundaries of what we understand about their world. As the sun casts long shadows across the stones, highlighting the sharp angles of carved limbs and contorted faces, Cerro Sechín remains steadfast. It invites contemplation of what has been achieved and what may forever elude comprehension. Could there be techniques, knowledge, or meanings encoded in the walls that modern science has yet to uncover? The site challenges observers to accept that some mysteries are not fully solvable, that the past may guard its secrets with deliberate subtlety. And so the walls endure, prompting awe, inquiry, and the quiet wonder that defines our encounter with the unknown. The morning mist drapes itself over the rolling plains of central Sardinia, softening the outlines of scattered stones and low circular walls. Here, near the imposing presence of Santu Antine, one of the island's grandest nuragi, lies a series of domestic zones, quiet, unassuming settlements that hint at the rhythms of a world long vanished. From a distance, the structures appear almost trivial compared to the monumental Nuragic looming nearby, yet closer inspection reveals a meticulousness that belies their simplicity. Foundations of stone huts form neat clusters, their circular footprints echoing the architectural logic of the larger towers. The walls, built from locally sourced basalt and limestone, are thick and carefully aligned, their interiors partitioned into areas for cooking, storage, and daily living. Walking among these ruins, it is difficult not to imagine the daily lives of those who once inhabited them. Children running barefoot along the narrow alleys between homes. The smell of smoke from hearths mingling with the tang of fresh milk and baked bread. Tools carefully arranged by the fire. And yet, for all the ordinary human activity suggested by these spaces, the Nuragic domestic zones carry an air of deliberate mystery. Archaeologists have long examined these settlements for clues about the social and economic structure of Nuragic Sardinia, dating from roughly 1800 to 900 BCE. The proximity of these domestic zones to Santu Antine is immediately intriguing. Unlike many nuragi that rise alone upon hills or strategic vantage points, Santu Antine sits at the center of a complex landscape where living spaces, sacred areas, and agricultural zones seem carefully integrated. Some scholars argue that the nearby huts were simply practical extensions of the tower's needs, housing for workers, storage for grain, and shelters for herds. Yet, as field studies and excavation reports reveal, the story may be far more intricate. The layout of these domestic zones follows patterns that suggest an awareness of astronomy and geometry. Walls curve with almost mathematical precision. Doorways are consistently oriented along specific axes, and open courtyards align with the sun's passage during solstices. Could this be mere coincidence, or were the inhabitants embedding cosmic knowledge into their everyday architecture? The mainstream interpretation leans toward practicality. Alignments could aid in seasonal planning, track daylight for work routines, or facilitate passive heating. Yet the possibility of intentional ritual significance cannot be dismissed entirely. What kind of society blends the mundane and the celestial so seamlessly into its domestic spaces? Artifacts recovered from the zones deepen the puzzle. Pottery shards are ubiquitous, some decorated with simple geometric motifs, others more elaborate, almost hypnotic in their precision. Grinding stones, cooking implements, and storage vessels suggest a community self-sufficient and attuned to the rhythms of farming and pastoralism. But there are also objects that defy easy categorization. Small, intricately carved figurines, stone objects of indeterminate function, and fragments of bronze tools whose purposes remain debated. Were these simply everyday items, or did they hold symbolic or ceremonial significance that has been lost to time? And why, despite extensive excavation, have so few organic remains, clues to diet or ritual offerings, been preserved in these zones? The physical arrangement of the domestic clusters themselves hints at social structure. Huts are rarely isolated. Instead, they cluster in compact rings or loose rectangles, often separated by narrow alleys and occasionally connected to larger communal spaces. Some archaeologists propose that these clusters represent extended family units or small communal groups, with shared responsibilities and shared labor. But the variations in size and construction quality between dwellings raise questions. Were certain homes reserved for elite families, artisans, or religious functionaries? Or could the differences reflect something more enigmatic, a code or hierarchy tied not just to social status, but to spiritual or astronomical significance? Adding another layer of intrigue, some researchers have noted peculiar features embedded within the landscape itself. Terraces, low embankments, and stone markers seem to guide movement along specific pathways. Certain stones exhibit subtle carving or unusual placement, almost as if they were intended to be noticed only at particular times of day or year. Could these be remnants of ritual circuits, alignments for observation of celestial events, or even markers for some forgotten form of record-keeping? And if so, why have such patterns appeared only at a handful of domestic zones, clustered around monumental Nuragic like Santu Antine, while others across Sardinia show no comparable signs? One cannot ignore the shadows of speculation that naturally emerge from these observations. Some fringe theories suggest the domestic zones may have been centers of esoteric knowledge, places where astronomical, mathematical, or ritual secrets were taught and practiced. Others propose the possibility of lost technologies, techniques for construction or metallurgy that exceeded what one would expect from Bronze Age Sardinia. Mainstream archaeology remains cautious, emphasizing that the evidence is fragmentary and that every interpretation must contend with centuries of erosion, reconstruction, and human activity that have altered the sites. Yet, the combination of precise construction, seemingly intentional alignments, and unusual artifacts leaves a lingering question. How much of this knowledge has been irretrievably lost, and how much might be deciphered with a fresh perspective? Walking among the stone foundations, it is easy to feel time itself folding. The air is quiet, yet it carries the echoes of lives intensely lived. Every hearth, every threshold, every carefully placed stone seems to whisper fragments of a story that refuses to be fully told. Could it be that the domestic zones were simultaneously practical and sacred, ordinary yet extraordinary, a threshold between the visible and invisible worlds? Did the people of Santu Antine understand something about their surroundings, about light, sound, and space, that we are only beginning to glimpse? And yet, for all the careful excavation, all the meticulous measurement, the mysteries endure. There is no inscription, no definitive record, no artifact that fully explains why the domestic zones were designed as they were, or what their role truly was in Nuragic society. The stones speak, but in riddles, their voices muted by millennia. The sun still rises over the ancient walls, and the shadows fall where they always have, indifferent to our attempts at understanding. Perhaps this is the enduring power of these sites, the quiet, persistent reminder that not all knowledge is meant to be uncovered, that some patterns were created to endure beyond the comprehension of any single generation. The domestic zones near Santu and Antine invite us to wonder, to question, to imagine. They are both familiar and alien, domestic and monumental, practical and mysterious. And as the wind rustles across the plains, carrying the faint scent of wild herbs and ancient stone, one is left with a simple yet profound realization. In this world of enduring stone and shadowed memory, the mystery is not that we cannot explain everything. It is that we are still compelled to try. What then remains hidden beneath the stones? What knowledge was encoded in walls, in doorways, in the very layout of a humble domestic cluster? And how much of the Nuragic mind, their vision of the world and the cosmos, remains just beyond the reach of our modern gaze? The questions linger, unspoken, inviting us to return, to look closer, and perhaps to recognize that some secrets are not lost. They are merely waiting, patient, for the right observer to notice. A soft haze lingers over the fertile plains of southeastern Turkey, where the Orontes River winds its way through a landscape dotted with low hills and ancient mounds. One of these rises quietly above the surrounding farmland, a subtle but insistent presence, Tel Tayinat. From a distance it seems almost unremarkable, a modest mound weathered by centuries of wind and rain. But for those who approach, the earth itself seems charged with history. Every contour, every layer of soil carries the accumulated weight of countless generations, their lives, ambitions, and secrets buried just beneath the surface. Excavations here have revealed a city that once thrived as a cultural crossroads, a place where people from distant lands converged, traded, and perhaps even competed for influence. Tayinat's history stretches back to the early Bronze Age, yet it rose to prominence during the Iron Age, roughly between 1000 and 738 BCE, under the shadow of powerful regional states like the Neo-Hittite kingdoms and, later, Assyrian expansion. Archaeologists have uncovered monumental walls, intricate palaces, and complex urban planning that speak to a society both sophisticated and remarkably resilient. Walking among the ruins, it is impossible not to sense the layering of time. Foundations of mud brick and stone rise in uneven terraces, marking where buildings once stood. Courtyards, gates, and streets are partially preserved, their angles suggesting deliberate design and an understanding of geometry that seems striking for a period often associated with chaos and migration. Among these structures, one notices features that defy immediate explanation: carved stone slabs whose purpose is uncertain, channels or drains whose sophistication exceeds expectation, and inscriptions in scripts that hint at cultural connections extending far beyond the mound itself. Tayinat was not merely a city of dwellings. Temples and cultic spaces dominate certain sectors, hinting at a society deeply entwined with ritual and divine oversight. The most famous discovery is perhaps the monumental palace complex, adorned with reliefs and stone carvings depicting lions, mythic creatures, and warriors. Scholars have carefully analyzed these reliefs, noting similarities with Hittite motifs, yet also distinct innovations unique to Tayinat's artisans. But here, as often in archaeology, questions outnumber answers. What precisely did these images signify to the people who gazed upon them? Were they protective symbols, political propaganda, or something more enigmatic, a visual language whose full meaning is now lost to time? Among the most perplexing finds are the inscriptions themselves. Many are in Luwian hieroglyphs, yet they occasionally appear alongside motifs or scripts that do not correspond neatly to any known system. Mainstream scholars interpret these anomalies as regional variations, the inevitable evolution of language in a frontier city exposed to multiple influences. Yet the irregularities provoke wonder. Could Tayinat have been a hub for cross-cultural knowledge, where scribes experimented with writing in ways that we struggle to understand? Or perhaps these scripts contained esoteric information used only by a select few, whose purposes were meant to be seen but not fully comprehended by the uninitiated. Then there are the artifacts whose origins or functions remain tantalizingly unclear. Small statues, finely worked metal objects, and ceramics suggest a society capable of remarkable craftsmanship, yet their symbolic or practical significance is often ambiguous. Some vessels display unusual forms or patterns, almost geometric in their abstraction, while others bear enigmatic incisions that resist easy translation. Could these be merely decorative, or might they encode information, trading records, ritual instructions, or even mathematical calculations? Such questions linger because, despite careful excavation, the context of many finds is incomplete, disrupted by centuries of erosion, looting, and natural transformation. The city's fortifications also carry a sense of enigma. Massive walls rise in stepped courses, corners reinforced with angular bastions that demonstrate not only defensive sophistication, but also a keen understanding of spatial dynamics. Scholars often compare Tayinat's fortifications with contemporaneous sites in the Levant, noting both similarities and unexpected deviations. Why did the architects here choose certain angles, placements, or building techniques that seem inconsistent with regional norms? Were these choices purely functional, or did they also carry symbolic or ritual weight, perhaps reflecting cosmological beliefs or coded messages about the city's power? Environmental clues add another layer of mystery. Tayinat sits in a region where water management was critical, and evidence suggests a network of canals, reservoirs, and drainage systems. Yet some features appear almost excessive for mere survival. Oversized channels whose purpose is unclear, embankments whose alignment does not correspond to the natural flow of water. Were these built with pragmatic intent, or did they serve additional purposes, ceremonial, astronomical, or perhaps even experimental engineering that we cannot fully reconstruct today? One cannot ignore the human dimension, the echoes of lives lived in proximity to these monumental structures. Graves, some richly furnished, others stark and utilitarian, hint at social stratification, yet they raise more questions than they answer. Why do some elite tombs appear intentionally hidden or subtly aligned with distant hills? What does this say about beliefs regarding death, the afterlife, or the relationship between the living and the ancestors? Even ordinary domestic areas suggest a population deeply embedded in ritual practice, blurring the line between mundane daily life and sacred observance. Speculative theories have naturally grown around Tayinat, as they do around any site of enduring mystery. Some suggest the city was a repository of knowledge, a place where astronomy, mathematics, or ritual science intersected with political power. Others point to the stylistic sophistication of reliefs and urban planning as evidence of lost technologies, techniques or organizational principles that exceeded what would be expected from a frontier settlement. While mainstream archaeology approaches these possibilities with caution, the combination of advanced construction, unusual artifacts, and enigmatic inscriptions leaves a lingering sense of wonder. As one stands atop the mound, gazing across the plains where olive groves and wheat fields stretch to the horizon, it is easy to feel time folding back upon itself. Tayinat is both intimate and monumental, domestic yet imperial, a city whose echoes reach across millennia. Every stone, every carving, every alignment seems deliberate, yet resistant to easy interpretation. The city whispers of ambition, ritual, and knowledge, but it does so in riddles, offering glimpses without explanation. Perhaps the most profound mystery is not any single artifact, inscription, or architectural feature, but the city as a whole, its coherence, its ambition, and its enduring presence, despite the upheavals of history. How did a city in this remote, contested corner of the ancient world achieve such sophistication? What knowledge did its inhabitants possess, and how much has been irretrievably lost? And perhaps most hauntingly, what might still lie buried beneath the layers of soil, waiting to reveal itself to those patient enough to dig, observe, and imagine? Tayinat, like so many ancient sites, invites contemplation rather than certainty. It challenges our assumptions about what is possible, what is known, and what remains just beyond the reach of understanding. And as the sun casts long shadows over its terraces and walls, it leaves the viewer with a quiet, insistent question. In a place so meticulously built, so carefully aligned with human and natural rhythms, how much remains hidden, and who, or what, once walked these streets in ways we can scarcely imagine? Rising abruptly from the misty highlands of western Georgia, Shaori Fortress perches atop a rugged plateau, its weathered stones barely distinguishable from the cliffs that cradle them. The fortress commands a view of the surrounding valleys and distant peaks, a silent sentinel over terrain that has long been both strategic and forbidding. From afar, it appears almost to grow from the mountain itself, as if the rock had spontaneously arranged itself into walls, terraces, and towers. Approaching it, the senses sharpen. The air carries the scent of damp stone and alpine herbs, while the wind whistles through gaps in the masonry, producing a sound that almost resembles distant voices, a reminder that this place was once alive with human activity, yet remains profoundly isolated. Shaori is one of Georgia's enigmatic highland fortresses, and its origins are shrouded in both history and speculation. Archaeologists generally place its construction in the early medieval period, though some evidence suggests that earlier fortifications may have existed on the site, perhaps reaching back to the late Bronze Age. The fortress is remarkable for the precision and scale of its stonework. Massive blocks, carefully cut and fitted without mortar, form walls and towers that have withstood centuries of erosion, earthquakes, and harsh weather. The craftsmanship is undeniable, yet it raises immediate questions. How did builders transport and shape such enormous stones in such a remote and elevated location? And why was this particular plateau chosen, seemingly inaccessible, yet strategically commanding? The layout of Shaori is as fascinating as its construction. Its walls trace irregular lines along the contours of the cliff, creating multiple terraces and defensive zones. Within these walls, remnants of rooms, staircases, and passageways suggest a complex interior network, far beyond the simple defensive structures one might expect of a mountain stronghold. Some scholars argue that these arrangements reflect practical military considerations, designed to slow invaders and protect inhabitants. Others, however, point to peculiarities. Certain corridors abruptly terminate in blank walls, platforms appear without obvious purpose, and some terraces seem disproportionately large compared to the known population that could have occupied the fortress. Could these anomalies have had ceremonial or symbolic functions, perhaps related to social hierarchy or ritual practice? Or are we seeing traces of an architectural logic lost to time? Artifacts recovered from Shaori provide additional intrigue. Excavations have yielded pottery shards, metal implements, and traces of domestic life, indicating that the fortress was not merely a military outpost, but a place where people lived, worked, and perhaps worshipped. Yet, many of these finds are puzzling. Some metal tools exhibit unusual alloy compositions not typical for the region or period, suggesting techniques that may have been locally innovative or imported from distant cultures. Certain ceramic fragments bear intricate geometric designs whose meaning is uncertain. Are they purely decorative, or do they encode symbolic or astronomical information? These subtle anomalies hint at knowledge and skill that modern observers can recognize but not fully reconstruct. Shaori's elevated position also invites speculation about its broader purpose. Mainstream interpretations emphasize defense, a stronghold where regional leaders could control trade routes, monitor mountain passes, and withstand sieges. But some features resist purely military explanation. Large open platforms and terraces, oriented in particular alignments with the sun and distant peaks, suggest a possible ceremonial dimension. Could Shaori have functioned as a place of observation, astronomical, ritual, or both? Were the fortress's architects encoding knowledge of the heavens into its very structure, allowing them to mark solstices, seasons, or other phenomena critical to agriculture or spiritual practice? Or might these alignments have served as symbolic statements of power, connecting the earthly fortress to a cosmic order only partially understood by its builders? Rising abruptly from the misty highlands of western Georgia, Shaori Fortress perches atop a rugged plateau, its weathered stones barely distinguishable from the cliffs that cradle them. The fortress commands a view of the surrounding valleys and distant peaks, a silent sentinel over terrain that has long been both strategic and forbidding. From afar, it appears almost to grow from the mountain itself, as if the rock had spontaneously arranged itself into walls, terraces, and towers. Approaching it, the senses sharpen. The air carries the scent of damp stone and alpine herbs, while the wind whistles through gaps in the masonry, producing a sound that almost resembles distant voices, a reminder that this place was once alive with human activity, yet remains profoundly isolated. Shaori is one of Georgia's enigmatic highland fortresses, and its origins are shrouded in both history and speculation. Archaeologists generally place its construction in the early medieval period, though some evidence suggests that earlier fortifications may have existed on the site, perhaps reaching back to the late Bronze Age. The fortress is remarkable for the precision and scale of its stonework. Massive blocks, carefully cut and fitted without mortar, form walls and towers that have withstood centuries of erosion, earthquakes, and harsh weather. The craftsmanship is undeniable, yet it raises immediate questions. How did builders transport and shape such enormous stones in such a remote and elevated location? And why was this particular plateau chosen, seemingly inaccessible, yet strategically commanding? The layout of Shaori is as fascinating as its construction. Its walls trace irregular lines along the contours of the cliff, creating multiple terraces and defensive zones. Within these walls, remnants of rooms, staircases, and passageways suggest a complex interior network, far beyond the simple defensive structures one might expect of a mountain stronghold. Some scholars argue that these arrangements reflect practical military considerations, designed to slow invaders and protect inhabitants. Others, however, point to peculiarities. Certain corridors abruptly terminate in blank walls, platforms appear without obvious purpose, and some terraces seem disproportionately large compared to the known population that could have occupied the fortress. Could these anomalies have had ceremonial or symbolic functions, perhaps related to social hierarchy or ritual practice? Or are we seeing traces of an architectural logic lost to time? Artifacts recovered from Shaori provide additional intrigue. Excavations have yielded pottery shards, metal implements, and traces of domestic life, indicating that the fortress was not merely a military outpost, but a place where people lived, worked, and perhaps worshipped. Yet, many of these finds are puzzling. Some metal tools exhibit unusual alloy compositions not typical for the region or period, suggesting techniques that may have been locally innovative or imported from distant cultures. Certain ceramic fragments bear intricate geometric designs whose meaning is uncertain. Are they purely decorative, or do they encode symbolic or astronomical information? These subtle anomalies hint at knowledge and skill that modern observers can recognize but not fully reconstruct. Shaori's elevated position also invites speculation about its broader purpose. Mainstream interpretations emphasize defense, a stronghold where regional leaders could control trade routes, monitor mountain passes, and withstand sieges. but some features resist purely military explanation. Large open platforms and terraces, oriented in particular alignments with the sun and distant peaks, suggest a possible ceremonial dimension. Could Shaori have functioned as a place of observation, astronomical, ritual, or both? Were the fortress's architects encoding knowledge of the heavens into its very structure, allowing them to mark solstices, seasons, or other phenomena critical to agriculture or spiritual practice? Or might these alignments have served as symbolic statements of power, connecting the earthly fortress to a cosmic order only partially understood by its builders? High on a remote plateau in the rugged terrain of Nasu, Japan, a massive stone sits in silence, weathered by centuries, yet defiant against time and erosion. This is Masuda-no-Iwafune, a colossal monolith that immediately captures attention, not for its height, nor for its ornamentation, for there is little of either, but for its sheer presence, its impossibly precise form carved directly from bedrock. From a distance, it appears almost natural, a giant block that might have tumbled from the mountain itself. Yet, as one approaches, the scale and geometry become undeniable. Straight edges, sharp corners, and a perfectly flat top, cut with such precision that it seems as though human hands had orchestrated its creation with knowledge and tools that remain difficult to comprehend. The first impression is one of awe. The stone measures approximately 11 meters in length, 8 meters in width, and 4.7 meters in height, its surfaces smoothed to a degree that would challenge even modern stonemasons working with contemporary tools. Surrounding the monolith is open terrain, a clearing that allows the structure to dominate the landscape, visible from multiple vantage points, yet isolated from any obvious settlement. The context is as enigmatic as the object itself. No clear traces of habitation, no inscriptions, no accompanying artifacts to indicate who made it or why. Archaeologists have debated Masuda-no-Iwafune's origins for decades. Mainstream explanations suggest that it was a religious or ritual object, possibly associated with Shinto practices of the time, or perhaps a ceremonial marker for surveying the landscape. Yet the sheer size and precision of the stone present immediate challenges to conventional understanding. How could ancient people have quarried, transported, and shaped a block of this magnitude without tools of metal sufficient to produce such sharp lines? And why does its form resist categorization, appearing neither as a tomb nor as a clearly functional platform? The design itself adds layers of mystery. The top of the stone is flat, but its surface features shallow grooves and depressions whose purpose remains unclear. Some interpret these as channels for water, perhaps for ritual purification or symbolic purposes, while others speculate that they could be alignment markers, possibly oriented toward celestial bodies or significant topographical features. Yet the lack of accompanying documentation or comparable structures makes any conclusion tentative. What is certain is that the precision suggests deliberate intent. This is no haphazard rock left by erosion or natural fracture. Equally intriguing is the context of the surrounding landscape. Masuda-no-Iwafune sits on a plateau surrounded by hills and valleys, and its orientation may have been chosen with care. Some researchers propose that its position was determined to observe specific astronomical events, solstices, equinoxes, or the rising of particular stars. Could the monolith have functioned as a calendar, a sacred observatory, or a marker for ritual processions? The idea of ancient peoples encoding knowledge of time and space into stone is tantalizing yet difficult to prove. Comparisons with other megalithic traditions around the world only deepen the sense of wonder. Across continents, from the highlands of Georgia to the plains of Sardinia, humanity has left behind monumental stones that defy easy replication, demonstrating both ingenuity and ambition. Yet Masuda-no-Iwafune is unusual even among these examples. Its geometric clarity, the absence of carvings, and the lack of clear function make it simultaneously familiar and alien. It is as if it exists in a category of its own, neither purely ceremonial nor purely practical, resisting the classifications that archaeology prefers. Theories have naturally emerged to account for its construction. Some suggest that it was shaped with iron tools, although the wear patterns on the stone do not match conventional cutting techniques, leading some to propose methods now lost to time. Others speculate that the monolith was partially hewn in place, reducing the need to transport its enormous mass. Yet this leaves open the question of why such labor-intensive shaping was undertaken at all. How could a society without mechanized tools achieve such precision? And what knowledge, mathematical, architectural, or otherwise, might have been embedded in the process? There is also the question of context in ritual or spiritual life. In ancient Japan, the landscape itself often held sacred significance. Mountains, rivers, and unusual rock formations were frequently imbued with spiritual meaning. Could Masuda-no-Iwafune have functioned as a bridge between earth and sky, a point of communion between human society and the forces of nature? Its isolation, its scale, and its meticulous form suggest a purpose beyond the everyday, yet that purpose remains shrouded in silence, leaving the observer to speculate. The human element is striking. Imagining the effort required to shape and smooth the stone, one cannot help but consider the hands and minds behind it. Who were these builders? What motivated them to undertake such a colossal task with no surviving textual record to explain it? And perhaps most intriguingly, why leave the object isolated, without accompanying structures, tombs, or inscriptions that might clarify its role in society? The silence of Masuda-no-Iwafune is almost intentional, a deliberate withholding of knowledge that amplifies its mystery. Even today, the monolith resists replication. Modern engineers have studied it extensively, attempting to understand how such precise cutting and positioning could have been achieved. The consensus is that the craftsmanship is extraordinary for the period, and while theories abound, none can fully account for the combination of scale, precision, and placement. It is a testament to human ingenuity, yet it also challenges our assumptions about the limits of ancient technology. Standing beside the stone, one is struck by a paradox. It is both monumental and intimate, imposing yet oddly personal. Its surfaces invite touch, yet offer no clear answers. The grooves and depressions seem intentional, yet their meaning escapes interpretation. The plateau stretches outward, connecting the stone to the horizon, yet isolating it from human habitation. And as the wind moves across the plateau, rustling through grasses and low shrubs, it feels as if the landscape itself is participating in a ritual that predates memory. Masuda-no-Iwafune, like Shaori Fortress and Tel Tayinat before it, exemplifies the enduring enigma of human endeavor. A structure at once deliberate and inexplicable, tangible and inscrutable. It invites contemplation, reflection, and a recognition that not all human achievement leaves behind a record that can be fully understood. Its precision and scale speak of skill and vision, while its isolation and ambiguity whisper of lost knowledge and forgotten purpose. And so, as the sun casts long shadows across its perfectly flat surface, one cannot help but wonder, what did the builders see in the horizon that guided their hands? What knowledge, now lost, shaped their labor? And what other secrets lie hidden in the grooves, the edges, and the very stone itself, waiting for those willing to study, to question, and to imagine? The mystery remains, patient and silent, challenging us to acknowledge that some truths of the past may endure forever beyond the reach of explanation. As the sun rises over the Sahel, the light spills across the Bandiagara escarpment, a jagged wall of sandstone cliffs stretching over 150 kilometers through central Mali. From a distance, it appears as a natural fortress, a dramatic line etched into the horizon, rising hundreds of meters above the flat plains below. Yet look closer, and the cliffs reveal a hidden world carved into stone. Here, among overhangs, ledges, and caves, dwellings cling to vertical faces, their forms integrated seamlessly into the rock itself. The scale and ingenuity are immediately arresting. Homes, granaries, and communal spaces built high above the earth, seemingly inaccessible, yet perfectly suited to human life. These cliff dwellings are attributed to the Dogon people, whose ancestors settled the escarpment centuries ago, seeking refuge from invading forces and environmental pressures. Archaeological studies suggest habitation in this region dates back at least a millennium, though much of the evidence remains fragmentary. The dwellings vary from simple rock shelters to complex clusters of stone buildings, sometimes extending across several tiers, connected by narrow paths and ladders. From above, they seem almost suspended between earth and sky, a delicate balance of human ambition and natural architecture. Walking along the escarpment, it becomes clear that these dwellings are more than practical shelters. The positioning of structures often reflects careful planning, aligning homes, granaries, and communal spaces with natural contours, sunlight, and wind patterns. Granaries, for instance, are strategically placed to preserve stored grain, elevated to protect against pests and moisture. Yet certain terraces, ledges, and alcoves seem to defy strictly utilitarian explanation. Some appear deliberately hidden, accessible only by narrow or precarious paths, prompting questions about their original purpose. Were they defensive refuges, spiritual spaces, or secret repositories of knowledge or ritual objects? The dwellings themselves exhibit craftsmanship that is subtle but remarkable. Dry stone walls, precisely stacked without mortar, form rooms and enclosures that have endured centuries of weathering. The use of local materials demonstrates an intimate understanding of the landscape. Sandstone shaped and positioned to blend with the cliffs, wooden supports integrated without compromising stability. Yet, for all the practicality, there are architectural features that suggest symbolic or ceremonial significance. Certain doorways, niches, and platforms seem oriented toward the rising or setting sun, echoing patterns observed in other ancient cultures across the globe. Could these alignments have marked seasonal cycles, ceremonial events, or astronomical observations? Artifacts recovered from cliff settlements provide tantalizing glimpses into the lives of their inhabitants. Pottery, iron tools, and everyday implements speak to a society that was both self-sufficient and interconnected with wider trade networks. Yet there are objects that resist simple explanation. Sculptures, ritual masks, and enigmatic carvings hint at beliefs and practices that remain only partially understood. Some Dogon traditions suggest cosmological knowledge encoded in these spaces, knowledge of stars and celestial movements passed down orally through generations. Modern researchers debate the extent to which these traditions reflect ancient practices versus later cultural evolution, yet the possibility of lost knowledge embedded in architecture and artifacts is undeniable. The escarpment itself adds to the mystery. The cliffs rise precipitously, forming natural defenses that would have protected inhabitants from external threats. Yet the scale of construction suggests deliberate effort to integrate with the landscape rather than merely exploit it. Stone stairways, carved channels, and ledges indicate a sophisticated understanding of engineering, allowing movement and access in a terrain that seems at first impassable. How much of this ingenuity arose from necessity, and how much from an aesthetic or symbolic vision of habitation in harmony with the cliffs? Speculative interpretations have emerged over the years, though they remain cautious. Some propose that hidden chambers and isolated terraces may have served as ritual spaces or observation points, places where astronomical or spiritual knowledge was preserved and transmitted. Others note that the verticality of the dwellings creates an unusual social dynamic, where physical elevation could symbolize status or sanctity. Were these dwellings merely refuges, or did they embody a deeper understanding of space, security, and human relationship to the heavens? The human element is compelling. Imagine life here centuries ago. Families navigating narrow ledges, children learning the precarious paths as part of daily routine, communities coordinating labor to maintain and expand dwellings. The escarpment is both shelter and challenge, demanding ingenuity, cooperation, and courage. And yet, the design is so deliberate that it also suggests ritualized behavior. Thresholds, niches, and hidden spaces likely guided daily routines and ceremonial acts alike. How did inhabitants perceive their cliffside environment, not just as home, but as a structured world imbued with meaning? Even today, much of Bandiagara remains inaccessible. Erosion, remoteness, and the fragility of structures limit thorough study. What is preserved is enough to impress, but not enough to answer all questions. The dwellings resist complete understanding, leaving researchers to reconcile practical explanations with hints of something more, a symbolic landscape, a spiritual framework, or knowledge encoded in stone, wood, and the very contours of the cliffs. As one stands on a ledge, gazing over the expanse of cliffs and plains, the impression is of a world suspended in time. Masuda-no-Iwafune, Shaori Fortress, Tayinat, and now Bandiagara all share a quality that transcends geography. The human impulse to shape the environment with extraordinary skill, to encode knowledge, ritual, or meaning into stone, and to leave behind structures that challenge replication. The Dogon cliff dwellings, with their blend of practicality and enigmatic design, are a living testament to that impulse, inviting contemplation and deep reflection. Perhaps the greatest mystery is the continuity of human ambition these sites represent. Across continents, in disparate eras, people sought to create monumental works that endure, even when their exact purpose becomes obscured by time. The cliff dwellings are both familiar and alien, homes, granaries, and public spaces embedded in vertical stone, yet organized with a sophistication that seems to speak across centuries. What guided the decisions of these builders? What knowledge did they encode in ledges, thresholds, and hidden terraces? And what might still lie concealed, silently awaiting discovery, in the shadows of these cliffs? Bandiagara, like the other sites we have explored, reminds us that human ingenuity often exceeds our expectations. It challenges assumptions about technology, ritual, and social organization, and it insists on a slower, more contemplative approach to understanding. And as the wind sweeps across the cliffs, carrying dust, sand, and the faint echoes of footsteps long gone, one is left with a simple yet profound realization. In these vertical worlds, as in all the extraordinary sites we have visited, the past is never fully revealed. It waits, patient and silent, for those willing to see, to question, and to imagine. The morning mist clings to the slopes of West Java, Indonesia, softening the outlines of dense jungle and volcanic ridges. Rising quietly above the valley is Gunung Padang, a terraced hill that conceals one of the most enigmatic megalithic sites in Southeast Asia. At first glance, it appears as a natural hill, covered in vegetation and lichen-streaked stone. Yet as the fog lifts, the terraces reveal themselves. Massive blocks of volcanic stone arranged with meticulous precision, forming a labyrinth of platforms that climb the hill like steps to the sky. It is impossible not to be struck by the scale and complexity of the construction. Thousands of stones, each carefully positioned, forming terraces, walls, and terraces that extend across hundreds of meters. Gunung Padang has been the subject of archaeological investigation for decades, yet it continues to resist straightforward interpretation. Radiocarbon dating of soil layers and organic material suggests that parts of the site were constructed over several phases, possibly spanning thousands of years. Mainstream scholars typically place its primary construction in the Megalithic period, roughly between 2500 and 1500 BCE. Yet some researchers propose that deeper layers may date as far back as 20,000 years, though these claims remain contentious, sparking debate over the site's true antiquity. Walking among the terraces, one is immediately aware of the precision in the placement of stones. Large rectangular blocks, often weighing several tons, are arranged in regular rows and interlocking patterns. The surfaces of some stones are smoothed, others rough-hewn, yet the overall effect is deliberate, almost architectural in its logic. Channels carved into the stones hint at drainage or water management, but their exact purpose is unclear. Could they have been practical, part of an elaborate system to divert rainwater? Or were they symbolic, forming a network of lines that encoded knowledge or ritual meaning now lost to time? The site's layout raises further questions. Gunung Padang's terraces follow the contours of the hill in a manner that suggests careful planning, yet some features appear almost counterintuitive. Certain terraces are disproportionately wide, others steeply sloped. Some areas seem deliberately obscured by natural formations. Researchers have noted alignments that correspond to celestial events, such as solstices and equinoxes, suggesting that the site may have functioned as a calendar or observation platform. But without inscriptions or written records, these interpretations remain speculative. Did the builders encode astronomical knowledge into the very shape of the hill? Or are we imposing meaning onto patterns that are simply practical solutions for constructing on a steep slope? The scale of labor required to create Gunung Padang is staggering. Moving, shaping, and positioning thousands of volcanic stones without modern machinery would have demanded extraordinary coordination, planning, and knowledge of physics and leverage. Mainstream archaeology emphasizes the ingenuity of ancient societies, yet the site also challenges assumptions about the limits of prehistoric engineering. Could these communities have developed techniques now lost to us, methods so effective and precise that even modern engineers struggle to replicate them with limited technology? And if so, what drove such monumental effort? Ritual devotion, communal identity, astronomical observation, or something else entirely? Beyond the terraces, deeper layers of the site have been partially uncovered by excavation. Here, the pattern of megaliths appears more chaotic, yet hints at a complex, multi-layered construction process. Some stones are embedded deep in the hill, forming foundations that suggest earlier phases predating the visible terraces. Geophysical surveys indicate that Gunung Padang may be far larger than the exposed sections reveal, extending deep underground in a labyrinthine arrangement. Could this subterranean network have served practical, ceremonial, or even symbolic purposes? Or does it represent the gradual accumulation of labor and cultural memory over millennia, each generation contributing to a project begun by ancestors long vanished? Artifacts and organic traces from the site provide tantalizing yet limited insight into daily life. Pottery shards, tools, and fragments of stone implements indicate human habitation, but much of the activity remains invisible, lost to erosion and time. The absence of inscriptions, carvings, or overt symbolic markers compounds the mystery. We see the architecture, the massive stones, the terraces, yet the meaning of the site, the intentions of its builders, remains elusive. Why create such monumental structures without leaving a clear record? Was the act of construction itself the purpose, a ritualized labor meant to embody knowledge, social cohesion, or spiritual devotion? Speculative theories have naturally emerged. Some researchers propose that Gunung Padang represents one of the oldest known pyramidal structures in the world, predating those of Egypt and Mesopotamia, while others suggest a connection to lost technologies or ancient civilizations whose capabilities we cannot fully comprehend. Geologists note that the stones are volcanic and remarkably resistant, Yet the precise interlocking arrangements and large-scale terracing would have required exceptional skill. Could ancient societies have possessed knowledge of engineering and geology that has since been forgotten? Or is our astonishment a product of modern underestimation of human ingenuity in the prehistoric world? The surrounding landscape amplifies the sense of mystery. Gunung Padang overlooks valleys, rivers, and distant hills, providing a commanding view that connects the site to its environment in both practical and symbolic ways. In ancient times, these vantage points may have allowed observation of the heavens, signaling time, seasons, or agricultural cycles. Yet the isolation of the hilltop also conveys a sense of sanctuary, a deliberate separation from daily life that suggests ritual, contemplation, or protection. What stories were enacted here, and what knowledge was preserved, hidden in stone and soil? Standing atop one of the terraces, looking across the layered megaliths and the distant volcanic ridges, the scale and complexity of Gunung Padang impress the imagination. It is a site that demands contemplation, patience, and humility. Here, like Shaori Fortress, Masuda-no-Iwafune, and Bandiagara escarpment before it, we encounter human ambition that transcends ordinary expectation, achieving forms that challenge replication and understanding. The stones themselves speak not in words but in presence, in alignment, in the deliberate shaping of landscape. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not in any single stone or terrace, but in the cumulative vision of Gunung Padang. Who conceived it? Who labored to shape it? And what knowledge guided their hands? What purposes, practical, ritual, astronomical, or symbolic, drove the creation of a site that continues to defy conventional interpretation? And how much remains hidden, buried beneath the terraces, waiting for future discovery? Gunung Padang stands as a monument to the ingenuity, determination, and curiosity of ancient humans. Its terraces, its massive stones, and its concealed layers remind us that the past is not always immediately accessible, that human history contains depths and complexities still beyond our reach. And as the wind moves across the hilltop, rustling through tropical foliage, one is left with a quiet, insistent question. What knowledge, what vision, and what hands shaped this site, and what else might lie hidden beneath the stones, waiting for those willing to look, to question, and to imagine? Beyond the arid plains of Peru's Soup Valley, the early morning light reveals the gentle contours of ancient pyramids rising from sandy soil. These are the monumental structures of Coll, one of the oldest urban centers in the Americas, its stepped platforms and terraced plazas emerging from the earth like echoes of a civilization long vanished. From a distance, Coll's geometric forms seem almost abstract, their precise symmetry contrasting sharply with the natural curves of the surrounding valley. Yet, as one approaches, the scale and sophistication become apparent. Stone foundations, sunken plazas, and monumental pyramids, all carefully arranged to form a sprawling city that dates back more than 4,500 years. Coll represents a remarkable achievement. Archaeologists have identified 6 major pyramidal structures, dozens of smaller platforms, and extensive residential and communal zones. Unlike other sites of comparable antiquity, Coll appears to have flourished without defensive walls or evidence of warfare, suggesting a society organized around commerce, ritual, or social cohesion rather than military conquest. The city's layout demonstrates sophisticated planning. Plazas are positioned to create ceremonial focal points, stairways and terraces manage the flow of human movement, and residential areas are distributed in a manner that implies careful attention to both function and hierarchy. Walking among these ruins, one is struck by the clarity of design. The stones used in construction are meticulously cut and fitted, their surfaces smoothed and their edges aligned with surprising precision. The terraces are carefully leveled, forming platforms that could support ceremonial activity, gatherings, or agricultural experimentation. Irrigation channels, remnants of ancient roads, and subterranean spaces hint at a people deeply attuned to both environment and technology. Yet, for all its clarity, Corral resists complete interpretation. What exactly motivated such monumental effort? Why construct pyramids in an environment so challenging, where resources must have been carefully managed to sustain a growing city? Artifacts recovered from Carroll provide tantalizing glimpses into the lives of its inhabitants. Flutes made from bone suggest an advanced musical culture, while stone tools indicate complex craft and food preparation practices. No written language has been found, yet the city's scale and organization imply forms of record-keeping or administration that have left no tangible trace. How did this society coordinate labor, manage resources, and transmit knowledge across generations without writing? Could the architectural forms themselves, the placement of plazas, stairways, and pyramids, have served as a type of mnemonic or symbolic language, encoding social, ritual, or astronomical information in stone? The orientation of Corral's structures deepens the mystery. Some pyramids and plazas align with celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, or the rising of particular stars. Such alignments suggest that the city may have functioned in part as an astronomical observatory, linking human activity to cycles of the heavens. Yet it is unclear whether these alignments were primarily practical, ceremonial, or symbolic. Were they guides for planting and harvesting, sacred markers of ritual time, or expressions of cosmological understanding? Or could they have served all these purposes simultaneously in a society whose worldview integrated the earthly and the celestial in ways we can only begin to imagine? The urban scale of Corral is equally striking. For a city of its time, its population must have required extensive coordination to construct and maintain pyramids, plazas, and residential zones. Yet there is no evidence of fortifications, suggesting that the city's builders prioritized organization and cooperation over defense. Could Corral's endurance, its carefully balanced architecture and communal design, reflect a sophisticated understanding of social engineering, enabling large groups to function without centralized coercion? Or was it sustained by a spiritual or ritual authority that guided labor, ensured cohesion, and imbued work with meaning beyond survival? Corral's context in the broader landscape is also revealing. Situated along the Soup River, the city benefited from fertile floodplains, access to marine resources, and trade routes connecting inland and coastal regions. Yet its monumental architecture elevates it beyond a mere functional settlement. The pyramids, terraces, and plazas seem to assert presence, to communicate order, intention, and perhaps a vision of the cosmos itself. The act of building, in this light, becomes both practical and symbolic, a manifestation of knowledge, power, and collective will made tangible in stone. Speculative interpretations naturally arise. Some suggest that Corral represents a lost form of early urban civilization, one that predates and informs later Andean cultures. Others highlight the city's remarkable absence of warfare and fortification as evidence of a unique societal structure, where ritual, governance, and communal identity were intertwined in ways that challenge conventional models. And some propose that the very act of constructing such precise terraces and pyramids in a resource-limited environment hints at techniques, knowledge, or social coordination now lost to time, methods that modern observers can recognize but not fully replicate. The human element of Corral is striking. Imagine the laborers carrying stones across terraces, shaping them with primitive tools, organizing themselves to build monuments that would endure millennia. Imagine the musicians filling plazas with music, families inhabiting carefully planned dwellings, and priests or leaders orchestrating ceremonies that linked people to the rhythms of the sun, river, and stars. Every stone and plaza speaks of lives lived with purpose, yet their intentions remain largely silent. How did the builders perceive their city? Did they understand the scale of what they were creating, the endurance of stone, and the symbolic weight of each terrace and pyramid? Even today, Corral retains a sense of mystery that challenges modern assumptions. Its monumental architecture, urban planning, and social sophistication speak of intelligence, vision, and ingenuity that we can recognize but not fully explain. Like Gunung Padang, Bandiagara, Masuda-no-Iwafune, and Shaori Fortress, Corral exemplifies human ambition that is both practical and enigmatic, a testament to the capacity of ancient societies to create structures of lasting significance. Standing on the edge of a sunken plaza, overlooking the terraced pyramids and the surrounding Soup Valley, one is left with a quiet sense of awe. Corral invites contemplation rather than certainty. It reminds us that the past is layered and complex, that monumental human achievement often outlasts the records explaining it, and that knowledge can be encoded in stone, labor, and urban design as powerfully as in words. And so, as the wind sweeps across the terraces, carrying the faint echoes of flutes, footsteps, and ritual chants from long ago, a single question lingers. What drove these people to create a city of such scale, precision, and enduring beauty, and how much of their knowledge, wisdom, and intention remains hidden, waiting for discovery? Corral endures as both a place and a mystery, challenging us to look, to question, and to imagine the minds and hands that shaped it. Beneath the modern streets of Paula, Malta, lies a hidden world carved in silence and shadow, the Hypogeum of Ħal-Saflieni, a subterranean labyrinth of stone that has survived for more than 5,000 years. At first, the entrance is unassuming, a small doorway leading into the earth, but stepping inside, the air cools, the light fades, and the walls begin to reveal themselves, carefully hewn rock chambers, narrow corridors, and gently curved ceilings, all carved with remarkable precision from the native limestone. The space seems alive with history, yet profoundly still, a testimony to human ingenuity that remains both awe-inspiring and enigmatic. The Hypogeum is unique. Excavations reveal multiple levels, descending some 10 meters below ground, with chambers connected by corridors, stairways, and niches. Each room is meticulously shaped, walls smoothed and rounded, corners formed with deliberate curvature, and surfaces polished in ways that reflect both skill and intention. The central oracle room is particularly striking, with acoustic properties that allow sound to resonate throughout the chamber. A whisper, a chant, or a single note played on a simple instrument can carry across the space as if amplified by unseen hands. How and why were such precise acoustics achieved in an era without advanced architectural knowledge? Was it accidental, or were the builders aware of the effects and their possible spiritual significance? The Hypogeum was clearly a sacred place, likely used for ritual, burial, or both. Human remains found here indicate it served as an ossuary, a repository for the dead, with layers of interments spanning centuries. Yet the care with which the chambers were carved, the precision of each corridor and niche, and the enigmatic red ochre decorations on some walls suggest a purpose beyond mere storage of bones. Could these underground halls have been sites of ceremony, meditation, or communication with the divine? What knowledge guided the builders, enabling them to construct spaces that not only contained the dead, but also shaped the experience of the living through sound, light, and form? Artifacts recovered from the Hypogeum offer glimpses into a culture that remains largely silent to us. Pottery fragments, stone implements, and figurines suggest daily life intersected with ritual practice, yet much is missing. No written records, no inscriptions, no clear documentation of the ceremonies that once echoed through these chambers. Scholars have debated the meaning of certain carvings and symbolic forms, from spirals and dots etched into stone to depictions that hint at cosmological beliefs. Are these decorations purely symbolic, or might they have encoded knowledge of celestial cycles, human anatomy, or spiritual principles? The engineering itself is extraordinary. The limestone of Malta is relatively soft, yet carving multiple interconnected levels with smooth stairways, terraces, and niches demands skill, patience, and careful planning. Some chambers are supported by delicate arches, while others rely on subtle variations in stone thickness to prevent collapse. The precision suggests a culture with deep understanding of structural integrity, yet there is no evidence of metal tools sophisticated enough to facilitate such work easily. How did these Neolithic builders achieve such uniformity and stability? What tools or techniques, now lost to time, allowed them to transform rock into an intricate underground city? Beyond the practical, the Hypogeum exerts a psychological power that has fascinated visitors for generations. The low ceilings, narrow passageways, and dim lighting create an intimate and contemplative atmosphere. One feels the presence of the past, of countless lives shaped by ritual and belief, echoing through the corridors. Could the design have been intended to evoke a sense of awe, humility, or connection to the afterlife? Or was it a functional response to burial needs, with beauty and spirituality emerging naturally from practical considerations? Speculative interpretations abound, though most remain careful. Some propose that the Hypogeum served as a sacred site where sound, light, and stone were combined to facilitate altered states of consciousness. Others suggest that the builders encoded astronomical or calendrical knowledge within the layout of the chambers, perhaps using the space to track seasonal cycles or ritual timing. The exact purpose of the red ochre decoration, combined with the acoustics and geometry, continues to elude researchers. Were these halls a form of prehistoric observatory, a spiritual temple, or a deliberately designed monument to the dead, or perhaps all three simultaneously? What is remarkable is the Hypogeum's preservation. Despite centuries of human habitation above ground and natural erosion, the underground complex remains intact, allowing us to witness the sophistication of its builders. The layers of soil and sediment beneath the modern city preserve a history that reaches back to the Neolithic, yet even with careful excavation, much is hidden. The deepest chambers, some yet unexplored or partially inaccessible, may hold answers, or further questions, about the people who shaped this subterranean world. The human element remains haunting. Imagine the laborers chiseling through rock, lowering stones into place, polishing surfaces, and carefully shaping corridors and rooms, generation after generation. Imagine the ceremonies, the whispers, the music, and the rituals that unfolded within these stone walls. Each act of construction, each placement of stone, was deliberate, perhaps intended to guide the living and honor the dead. And yet, the builders left no written record of their intentions, leaving the modern observer with only the silent testimony of stone. In the broader context of global archaeology, the Hypogeum of Ħal-Saflieni resonates with other sites we have explored: Coll, Gunung Padang, Masuda-no-Iwafune, Bandiagara, Shaori Fortress, and Tayinat. Across continents, humanity has demonstrated a remarkable capacity to shape the environment with extraordinary precision and purpose, often leaving behind monuments whose full meaning is now obscured. The Hypogeum adds a new dimension, an underground world that fuses architecture, acoustics, ritual, and the care of the dead into a coherent and mysterious whole. Standing at the mouth of the chambers, looking down into the labyrinthine corridors, one is struck by a paradox. The Hypogeum is intimate and monumental, practical and symbolic, silent yet resonant. Its stone walls contain centuries of human life, yet reveal almost nothing directly. It is a place that invites reflection, patience, and imagination. How did these early builders conceive such spaces? What principles guided their labor and their vision? And, perhaps most tantalizingly, what still lies hidden in the deepest recesses, beyond light, touch, and easy comprehension, waiting for future generations to discover? The Hypogeum of Ħal-Saflieni endures as a monument to human ingenuity, devotion, and mystery. It reminds us that some achievements transcend time, resisting replication and full understanding, yet leaving an indelible impression on all who enter. And as the faint echoes of footsteps and whispered conjecture fade into the limestone corridors, one is left with a quiet question. What truths about life, death, and human aspiration were encoded in these stones, and what secrets remain patiently hidden beneath the surface of the earth? As the morning light stretches across the plains of Sindh in modern-day Pakistan, the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro emerge from the haze of centuries. A city that once thrived in a river valley more than 4,500 years ago. From a distance, the earthworks resemble gentle mounds rising from a flat landscape. Yet closer inspection reveals a staggering human achievement. The faint grid of streets, the remnants of rectangular dwellings, and the unmistakable traces of advanced urban planning. This is a city that speaks not through written histories or grand monuments, but through its careful layout, its engineering, and the enduring evidence of lives lived in remarkable order and complexity. Mohenjo-Daro, one of the central hubs of the Indus Valley civilization, is extraordinary in its precision. Archaeologists have noted the nearly perfect orthogonal alignment of streets, running north-south and east-west, intersecting to form an organized grid. Each residential block is remarkably uniform, often containing multiple dwellings, courtyards, and storage spaces. Evidence of standardized baked brick sizes suggests not only central planning, but a level of societal coordination rarely seen in contemporary civilizations. Every brick, every street, and every canal seems intentional, reflecting a city built with foresight and discipline. How could a society without apparent kings, monumental inscriptions, or a deciphered written language organize labor and resources on such a scale? The engineering of Mohenjo-Daro is as impressive as its layout. Beneath its streets lies a network of drains and covered sewers, designed to carry waste away from homes and public spaces, an early example of urban sanitation that would not be matched in many parts of the world for millennia. Wells are strategically placed to provide clean water, while large public baths, including the famed Great Bath, suggest communal and perhaps ritual significance. The Great Bath itself is a rectangular pool, carefully waterproofed with bitumen, flanked by steps and surrounded by corridors. Its purpose remains a mystery. Was it purely functional, a way for the city's inhabitants to cleanse themselves? Or was it ceremonial, a stage for rites that we can no longer fully comprehend? Artifacts discovered across the city add further intrigue. Sculptures, figurines, and seals depict humans, animals, and symbolic motifs, some of which remain difficult to interpret. Standardized weights and measures imply trade, commerce, and sophisticated administration. Yet there are no palaces, no grand tombs, no overt display of hierarchy, suggesting a social organization unlike that of contemporary civilizations such as Mesopotamia or Egypt. Could Mohenjo-Daro have operated under a form of collective governance, where order and coordination emerged without the imposition of rulers? And if so, what mechanisms ensured such remarkable adherence to planning, construction, and sanitation standards across an entire urban landscape? The scale of construction raises questions that are difficult to answer. Large dwellings and granaries required coordinated labor, precise knowledge of brick production, and careful logistical planning. Streets and alleyways were deliberately leveled and oriented, and public spaces were situated to manage both traffic and drainage. Yet we are left to imagine how thousands of individuals, working in an era without mechanized tools, could have produced such uniformity and precision. Was the effort entirely human ingenuity guided by shared knowledge and communal tradition? Or might there have been techniques, now lost, that enabled the city to be built more efficiently than we can currently understand? There is also the question of urban resilience. Mohenjo-Daro sits in a floodplain, yet evidence suggests it was constructed to mitigate seasonal inundation. Raised platforms, brick-paved streets, and elevated dwellings reflect a deliberate response to environmental challenges. And yet, despite these precautions, the city was ultimately abandoned, likely due to changing river courses, climate shifts, or other natural disasters. What can this tell us about the knowledge and foresight of its inhabitants, and how much of that knowledge remains encoded in the city's design? Speculative theories naturally emerge around Mohenjo-Daro's sophistication. Some researchers highlight the precision of brickwork and urban planning as evidence of advanced engineering knowledge, possibly including techniques for surveying and alignment that would not be commonly used until millennia later. Others propose that the city reflects a society highly attuned to organization, efficiency, and communal cohesion, a model of civilization that relied on consensus and shared norms rather than overt authority. Could the city's planners have possessed knowledge of mathematics, surveying, and urban design that we are only beginning to appreciate? Or does our fascination arise from the stark contrast between modern assumptions and ancient achievement? The social and spiritual dimensions of Mohenjo-Daro add further layers of mystery. The Great Bath, altars, and ceremonial structures suggest ritual activity, yet we have no written record to illuminate the beliefs, deities, or practices that guided its inhabitants. Some seals depict figures in poses that have been interpreted as divine or symbolic, but their meaning remains uncertain. Did these urban spaces serve primarily practical functions, or were they designed to integrate daily life with ritual and cosmology? And how did the residents perceive their city, not just as a physical space, but as an embodiment of social, spiritual, and environmental understanding? Even today, much of Mohenjo-Daro remains buried beneath centuries of sediment and modern activity. Excavation continues to reveal only fragments of the city's original extent, leaving vast areas unexplored. The deeper layers, potentially older and more revealing, may yet provide insights into the early phases of urban planning, technology, and social organization. What stories remain hidden in these layers? How much of the city's knowledge, its architecture, and its cultural vision has been lost to time? Standing amidst the crumbling streets, one is struck by the paradox of Mohenjo-Daro, a city of immense human achievement, meticulously organized, yet silent in its testimony. Its streets, wells, granaries, and baths speak of practical skill and extraordinary foresight, yet they reveal almost nothing of the minds and lives behind them. How did this civilization develop such precision, coordination, and resilience? And why did it vanish, leaving only stone, brick, and the faint echo of its former life? Mohenjo-Daro, like Gunung Padang, Coll, Masuda-no-Iwafune, Bandiagara, Shaori Fortress, and Ħal-Saflieni, exemplifies human ingenuity that defies replication and invites reflection. Across continents and millennia, humans have shaped environments with knowledge, skill, and vision that endure long after the people themselves have disappeared. The city challenges modern observers to reconcile what we can measure and understand with what remains unknowable. Its precision and sophistication speak to capability, intention, and creativity, yet its absence of clear rulers, inscriptions, or monumental hierarchy leaves us with profound questions. As the sun sets over the Indus Plain, casting long shadows across ancient streets and partially excavated dwellings, one cannot help but contemplate the mystery of Mohenjo-Daro. How much knowledge, how much ingenuity, and how many stories are still buried beneath the soil, waiting to be uncovered? And what does it tell us about human potential, the transmission of knowledge, and the ways civilizations rise, thrive, and ultimately vanish, leaving behind only the silent testimony of stone and earth? The highlands of Laos unfold in soft green undulations, valleys dotted with limestone outcrops, the occasional river carving silver ribbons across the landscape. But upon these rolling plains lies an anomaly that arrests the imagination: the plain of jars, an expanse of earth strewn with hundreds, perhaps thousands of colossal stone vessels, some standing upright, others toppled by time. At first glance, they seem almost accidental, the work of nature or erosion, yet a closer approach reveals their deliberate construction. Cylindrical, often over 2 meters tall, with precise rims and smooth surfaces hewn from sandstone, granite, or conglomerate rock. The jars are enigmatic, monumental, and oddly intimate all at once, both familiar as vessels and alien in scale and placement. No one truly knows why these jars were placed here, scattered across the valleys of Shenquang province. Archaeologists date them broadly to the Iron Age, around 500 BCE to 500 CE. But even these estimates are tentative, based on limited associated artifacts and radiocarbon dating of organic material found nearby. The sheer size and weight of the stones, some weighing several tons, suggest a level of engineering skill and coordination that challenges our assumptions about prehistoric societies in this region. How were they quarried, transported, and positioned with such precision across uneven terrain, without modern machinery or obvious means of lifting? Walking among the jars, one is struck by their scale and the rhythm of their arrangement. They are rarely solitary. Instead, they form clusters of varying density, sometimes aligned with the contours of hills, sometimes spread across open fields. Some jars appear to have been used for storage, yet their interiors are largely hollow with no traces of contents that could confirm prolonged use. Others bear subtle grooves or indentations, leading some researchers to speculate about lids, coverings, or mechanisms lost to time. Could they have been utilitarian, ceremonial, or symbolic? Perhaps a combination of all three, blending function and ritual in a manner now opaque to us. Excavations have uncovered fragments of human remains, beads, and metal tools near certain jar sites, suggesting a connection to burial practices. Some theorists propose that the jars served as funerary urns, holding cremated remains or serving as ceremonial markers for interment sites. Yet the jar's massive scale seems excessive for mere storage of ashes, implying a symbolic or ritual purpose beyond practicality. Why choose such enormous vessels scattered across the landscape instead of more conventional graves? What beliefs or cosmological views might have guided these choices? The logistics of creating the jars are equally confounding. Local stone is heavy and difficult to shape, yet the jars exhibit remarkably smooth walls and even rims, some carved with flared edges or decorative motifs. Quarries exist nearby, but the process of moving massive stones across valleys and hills, positioning them upright, and in some cases hollowing them internally, would have required extraordinary planning, tools, and manpower. Could this feat have been accomplished with simple levers and rollers alone, or might there have been techniques now lost, methods that allowed for efficiency and precision in ways we cannot fully reconstruct. The spatial patterns of the jars add further layers of mystery. Certain clusters are positioned along ridgelines or near streams, others in the open plains, and some alignments suggest possible observation of natural cycles or solar phenomena. Did the ancient builders choose locations for spiritual, astronomical, or environmental reasons? Was the placement meant to guide ritual processions, or did the jars themselves form a sacred landscape, a space where the living could commune with ancestors and the natural world simultaneously? And if so, what knowledge or belief system informed such deliberate positioning across hundreds of hectares of highland terrain? Speculative theories abound. Some suggest that the jars were part of a vast ritual landscape, where each vessel represented a stage in funerary ceremonies or initiation rites. Others propose that the jars might have been used in fermentation or storage of food or liquids on a ceremonial scale, though the absence of residues challenges this view. More fringe interpretations venture into cosmological symbolism, that the jars marked sacred points on the earth, aligning with constellations, celestial events, or unseen ley lines. None of these ideas can be proven, yet the jar's sheer presence encourages such speculation, inviting us to imagine human thought and intention in ways that transcend practical explanations. The human story embedded in the plane of jars is compelling and enigmatic. Imagine the labor required to quarry, shape, transport, and erect each massive vessel. Imagine the rituals, the ceremonies, the communities that gathered to place these stones with care, perhaps over generations. Each jar embodies human ambition, endurance, and imagination, yet they remain silent in their testimony. The absence of inscriptions, the minimal presence of associated artifacts, and the plain, monumental form of the jars leave modern observers grappling with the tension between what we can measure and what we cannot know. Time has added to the jar's enigmatic quality. Centuries of erosion, occasional earthquakes, and the upheavals of human activity, including warfare in the 20th century, have toppled and damaged many of the jars, yet a remarkable number remain, upright and imposing. The scars of conflict have even heightened the sense of fragility, of impermanence, making the surviving jars feel like echoes from a civilization whose full story has been lost. What else might lie hidden beneath the soil or under smaller, less visible jars? Could there be layers of use, ceremony, or habitation that we have yet to uncover? The experience of walking among these enormous stones is at once humbling and unsettling. There is an intimacy in their scale, in the hollows of their interiors and the smooth curve of their rims, yet their sheer size and number suggest a vision far beyond a single lifetime. Could the builders have envisioned the jars lasting centuries, witnessing generations pass, guiding the living in ritual or memory? And how much of their knowledge, encoded in stone, orientation, and placement, has been forgotten? The plain of jars, like Mohenjo-Daro, Gunung Padang, Coral, Masuda-no-Iwafune, Bandiagara, Shaori Fortress, and Ħal-Saflieni, exemplifies a pattern that stretches across time and geography. Human beings constructing environments of remarkable scale, precision, and intentionality, yet leaving mysteries that resist replication. Across continents, societies have shaped the earth with knowledge and vision, often for purposes that modern eyes struggle to fully comprehend. The jars stand as witnesses to such ambition, monumental in scale and yet profoundly enigmatic, inviting reflection, wonder, and speculation. As the sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows across clusters of stone, the silence of the plain of jars becomes palpable. Here, in this highland landscape, the past lingers in form and presence rather than in text or record. Each jar is a question, a prompt to consider the ingenuity, labor, and belief of those who placed them. and as the light fades, one is left with an enduring sense of mystery. Why were these massive vessels created? How were they moved and positioned with such precision? And what hidden knowledge, lost practices, or forgotten rituals might yet remain beneath the earth, silently waiting for those who are willing to search? High in the sacred valley of the Incas, where the Urubamba River winds like a silver ribbon through steep Andean cliffs, stands a place that captures the imagination and confounds the mind. Ollantaytambo, a living town built upon foundations laid centuries ago, and within it, a fortress whose walls speak of human ingenuity that seems almost impossible to replicate. Among the terraces, streets, and ceremonial structures rise stone blocks so massive, so precisely cut and fitted, that they seem to defy explanation. Each block, some weighing dozens of tons, interlocks with its neighbors without mortar, forming walls that have withstood earthquakes, centuries of rain, and the relentless passage of time. Approaching the walls, one is immediately struck by their scale. Stones rise in smooth, massive faces, their edges polished and their forms irregular yet perfectly complementary, as if each had been shaped specifically to fit its neighbor. Unlike the uniform bricks of other ancient constructions, the blocks here are unique. No two are alike, yet each fits seamlessly into the whole. This polygonal masonry, characteristic of Ollantaytambo and other Inca sites, creates a sense of organic strength, a visual rhythm that is both chaotic and harmonious. How did ancient builders cut, moved, and positioned stones of this size with such precision? What tools, techniques, or knowledge enabled them to achieve a fit so perfect that even a knife blade cannot slip between the joints? The engineering prowess on display here is remarkable. The walls form part of a complex defensive and ceremonial system, protecting terraces, temples, and storage structures while simultaneously guiding the movement of water, controlling drainage, and stabilizing the mountain slopes. Channels carved into the stone direct rainwater away from terraces, preventing erosion in a region prone to intense seasonal rains. The builder's understanding of structural integrity and environmental adaptation is evident everywhere, yet the precision of the masonry goes beyond practical necessity. There is an artistry here, a deliberate choice in shaping and joining stones, a consciousness of aesthetics that complements function. Could the builders have intuitively understood principles of stress distribution, leverage, and stone friction? Or were these methods codified knowledge passed down through generations in ways now lost to us? Closer examination deepens the mystery. Some of the largest stones, known locally as the Great Stones, weigh well over 50 tons, yet evidence of quarries or transport mechanisms is sparse. How were these enormous blocks quarried, shaped, and moved uphill, sometimes for hundreds of meters, using only ropes, levers, and manpower? Modern experiments with similar materials, using rudimentary tools and techniques, suggest that such feats would require extraordinary coordination, patience, and ingenuity. Yet the Incas accomplished this without written plans, advanced machinery, or known lifting devices. Does this hint at techniques lost to history, or a form of engineering that has been underestimated by modern scholars? The walls themselves suggest more than engineering. They convey intention, vision, and perhaps even cosmological or symbolic meaning. Certain blocks appear deliberately shaped to align with ceremonial terraces, plazas, or sacred mountains beyond the valley. In some cases, their faces seem to echo the contours of nearby peaks, as if the stone itself mirrors the landscape. Could these decisions have been purely aesthetic, or might they reflect a deeper integration of architecture, astronomy, and ritual? Was the placement of each stone guided by spiritual or astronomical principles, creating a network of resonance between human construction and the natural world? Within the fortress, the interplay of scale, orientation, and material is breathtaking. Smaller blocks are nestled precisely against larger stones, forming walls that resist seismic forces through interlocking geometry. Some scholars point out that the irregular shapes allow for minor movements during earthquakes, dissipating energy and preventing collapse, a feature still studied by modern engineers. Yet the craftsmanship required to achieve this stability without mortar, and with blocks of such irregularity, remains extraordinary. Could such ingenuity arise from careful trial and error, passed orally through generations, or was their knowledge, mathematical, geometrical, or experimental, so advanced that it challenges assumptions about the capabilities of pre-Columbian societies? Beyond the practical and technical, there is an aura of mystery surrounding the human story embedded in Ollantaytambo. Who were the workers that shaped, transported, and positioned these stones? How did they organize labor for such massive construction, coordinating hundreds or perhaps thousands of individuals across complex terraces and slopes? Archaeological evidence suggests that labor was likely communal, combining skilled artisans, general workers, and overseers in long-term projects that spanned decades. Yet the absence of written records or detailed inscriptions leaves us to imagine the methods, rituals, and social structures that enabled such feats. What cultural imperatives drove the creation of walls that are simultaneously defensive, functional, and aesthetically precise? The symbolic significance of the walls adds another layer of intrigue. Inca cosmology was deeply connected to landscape, with sacred mountains, rivers, and celestial events woven into ritual and social life. Could the arrangement of these massive blocks, the alignment of terraces, and the proximity to ceremonial plazas reflect intentional mapping of spiritual or astronomical phenomena? Certain blocks appear to bear marks or shapes that suggest ritual significance, though interpretations vary widely. Were these carvings purely functional, guiding placement, interlocking stones, or stabilizing joints? Or did they serve a more symbolic or ceremonial purpose? And if so, how much knowledge about cosmology and ritual was encoded into the very fabric of the walls themselves? Speculative interpretations have naturally emerged. Some researchers suggest that the precision and scale of the walls indicate techniques now lost to history, possibly involving advanced understanding of leverage, geometry, or even acoustic properties for ceremonial purposes. Others point to the sheer impossibility of moving such stones with known methods as evidence of extraordinary communal organization, innovation, or knowledge that surpasses our contemporary expectations. While no credible evidence suggests anything supernatural, the walls invite contemplation about human capacity, ambition, and ingenuity, particularly in the context of ancient societies often underestimated by modern observers. Time has also shaped our perception of Ollantaytambo. Earthquakes, weathering, and centuries of human activity have altered the original configuration of terraces and walls, yet the essential precision remains intact. Even with partial erosion, the interlocking stones, the alignment of terraces, and the durability of construction continue to defy casual explanation. Each wall is not only a technical achievement, but a message in stone, a dialogue across centuries between the builders and those who now walk among their creation. What intentions, beliefs, and cultural knowledge are encoded in these walls, waiting silently for interpretation? Beyond the fortress itself, Ollantaytambo sits within a landscape that amplifies its significance. The surrounding mountains, rivers, and valleys are not passive backdrops, but active participants in the design of the city and ceremonial spaces. Terraces cascade down hillsides, capturing sunlight, water, and gravity in ways that suggest practical engineering intertwined with aesthetic and symbolic awareness. Could the placement of stones, terraces, and plazas have been designed to echo the natural world, creating a dialogue between human architecture and the rhythms of the Andean landscape? And if so, what principles guided this integration, and how much of this knowledge has been lost? Standing before the walls, one experiences a paradox: awe at their physical scale, wonder at their precision, and humility in the face of human creativity that seems almost beyond comprehension. The massive blocks evoke strength and permanence, yet the true marvel lies in the subtlety. The way irregular stones fit seamlessly, the way terraces harmonize with slopes, and the way human intention resonates across centuries. Ollantaytambo reminds us that ancient societies were capable of achievements that challenge modern replication. That ingenuity can manifest in both grand gestures and meticulous detail, and that knowledge, practical, aesthetic, and spiritual, can be encoded into stone itself. As shadows lengthen over the sacred valley, the walls of Ollantaytambo catch the last rays of sunlight, highlighting every joint, edge, and surface with a golden glow. It is a silent testimony to human ambition, skill, and vision, a monument to the capacity to shape the environment with extraordinary precision and purpose. Yet it is also a puzzle. How were such feats achieved? What techniques and knowledge guided the builders? And what further insights remain hidden, embedded in the stones, waiting for future discovery? Ollantaytambo, like the Plain of Jars, Mohenjo-Daro, Gunung Padang, Caral, Masuda-no-Iwafune, Bandiagara Escarpment, Shaori Fortress, Tayinat, and Ħal-Saflieni, exemplifies a global pattern. Humans creating environments, structures, and monuments of enduring complexity, precision, and ingenuity. Achievements that resist easy replication and continue to inspire curiosity. Each stone block, each terrace, each carefully fitted wall challenges our assumptions, inviting reflection on the limits of ancient knowledge and the persistence of human ambition. And as the evening settles over the valley, one is left with a lingering question. What knowledge, what vision, and what hands shaped these walls, and how much of it has been preserved, hidden, or lost beneath the passage of centuries, waiting for those willing to observe, to wonder, and to imagine?